Okay, we're going to start the meeting. Call the order on Madam Clerk.
Mayor Kirkman. Here. Vice Mayor Samari. Here. Commissioner Johnson Sadella.
Here.
Commissioner Tudor.
Here.
Commissioner Wise.
Here.
Stand for the flag, please. This evening is a special commission meeting that's supposed to occur from 6:30 to 7, and then we're promptly going to start the workshop at 7 p.m. I'm going to turn this over to the first of all, public comments related to the agenda item. If the commissioners would allow me to, since we have a very short, and this is just for public hearing to schedule a date, that we could ask the audience to be specific to the specific agenda items only if there's no objection, and we can hold general comments because we're going to be taking those off from the night. If there's no objection. Only this item, so we can get through it. Okay, so public comments for agenda-specific items only. Prior to that, if the village attorney would go ahead and review the quorum.
All comments must be addressed to the commission as a body and not to individuals. Any person making impertinent or slanderous remarks or who will become boisterous while addressing the commission shall be barred from further audience before the commission by the presiding officer unless permission to continue or again address the commission is granted by the majority vote of the commission members present. No clapping, applauding, heckling, or verbal outbursts in support or in opposition to a speaker or his/her remarks shall be permitted. No signs of placards shall be allowed in commission chambers. Please mute or turn off your cell phone or pager at the start of the meeting. Failure to do so may result in being barred from the meeting. The persons exiting the chamber shall do so quietly.
Thank you. We're going to go ahead and read off the resolution 2019-18 and then village rate for fiscal year 19. I just want resolution read and then I'm going to
The resolution of the village commission of the village of Biscayne Park, Florida, establishing a tentative millage rate of 9.7000 for fiscal year 2019 to 2020, establishing the current year rollback rate to be 9.1689, and establishing the first and the second public budget hearings as required by law. Directing the village clerk and the finance manager to file said resolution with the property appraiser and tax collector of Miami-Dade County pursuant to the requirements of Florida statutes and the rules and regulations of the Department of Revenue of the state of Florida. Establishing the time and location of the first and second public hearings, providing for an effect.
Thank you. And we're going to open public comments. Maybe clerk to call for the first question.
Ross.
Good evening, Ross, 11166 Strickland Boulevard. I'm glad someone woke up late last week and decided to hold this special meeting to set the trend. But can you possibly get it done correctly the first time? This isn't the first time for the manager and the mayor and some of the other commissioners going through a term process, and you have extra eyes with fresh village attorneys reviewing all your agendas. Nevertheless, you notice the agenda that's posted outside the village hall says that the rollback rate is 8.6898. That was last year's rollback rate. So what you advertise at Village Hall as being the resolution that you're adopting today is not correct. In addition, the rollback rate gets corrected in the actual resolution, so that's good, but it's not posted at Village Hall. Then you're trying to set the first reading of millage and budget ordinance for August 6th. August 6th is almost 3 weeks before the proposed budget, the proposed tax bill gets mailed out by the property appraiser's office. That tax bill is what advises the taxpayers when the hearing is gonna be. So you're actually gonna have the first hearing before people get notice of when it's gonna be. Not only that, I'm fairly certain that the 2019 trim compliance workbook was sent to your manager. It gets sent by the DOR every year. And it provides an easy to follow, step-by-step roadmap for this process. Your first hearing to adopt a millage and approve a budget must occur between September 3rd and September 18th. Within 15 days of that first hearing, you must advertise very specific details about the millage and about the budget. Once that advertisement is in place, you must hold a second hearing within 2 to 5 days of that advertisement appearing in the paper. Please follow the law, follow the trim guidelines, and stop squandering the village's money, our money, with multiple attorney review of agendas and preparing ordinances that aren't even called for, and multiple do-overs. Please get this done correctly the first time.
I'd like to. Thank you. Chuck Ross, 1166 Griffin Boulevard. So, as to the rollback rate, there's a calculation that of the rollback rate that should be attached to the agenda so we can see how it was computed, and it's not there. As far as well, I don't want to go into legal time. We're going to, when we come to the next meeting, I want to talk about the steep legal bill. But I would like to make a comment that I've been asking for the June services that are billed in July from the manager for over 2 weeks, and I haven't been able to get them. I haven't even been able to get a response on this. So it's a public records request. It should be readily available, and I don't know what is possibly taking so long to take care of these things. It used to be taken care of in a matter of days. This is simply something that exists, should be on somebody's desk, may have not been paid yet. Thank you.
Any public comments? Public comments? Manager Maris, would you care to address, introduce this item?
This resolution just sets the return rate at 9.6%. This resolution just sets the rate at 9.7 millage rate, and then sets the dates for the hearings. We'll double check on the dates that Ms. Ross mentioned to make sure that we are in compliance. She mentioned something about the compliance workbook. I've not received that. And so I will check on that.
Any comments with that? Okay, thank you. Mr. Thomas? All right. I just want to make one comment as to make sure there were allegations here that we're doing things not in the legal process. Our attorneys making sure that we are. Okay. Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Okay. So with that in mind, is there a motion to approve? Well, actually, let's open for discussion. Is there a discussion on the actual millage rate? Not at this time, correct? So this is the day just to set the hearing dates, correct? Okay. Are there objections to the dates that are here or anything that's on the resolution?
These dates are selected to coincide with the budget hearings were already set, so if these dates are not correct, then you're going to need to do a special meeting. You're going to need to do a special meeting.
Okay, so
If I may. Something that can be addressed. Now, I'd rather not have to make that additional meeting.
can we take a,
Correct.
would you like a, yeah. Okay, so we're going to take a 10-minute recess or 5 minutes? research and we'll, just make sure that we are in compliance. So, if you have no further objection, video, starting again, meeting is now, open again, is now. Okay, turn on this and,
Okay, so the proposed hearing date, you guys tried to tack this on to the August 6th regular commission meetings until they built a version of the residents' right. Your deadline should be really August 8th, not August 6th. Your window is August 8th through the 13th. The 13th is a Tuesday. That would be the Tuesday after your August 3rd. Your window is Thursday the 8th through Tuesday the Thursday. So that's
No,
that's
not
our
correct. That's our target for the first.
Are you saying also?
So, all right, I'm gonna be asked respectfully, I allow.
It's not correct. So do what you want.
Okay. And,
Yeah.
please. If this trend document provides, I apologize, I'm not even on. It provides the timelines and the timing. So this should be very cookie cutter to do. Certification comes out July 1st, and according to the document, you have to hold a tentative hearing from September 3rd to September 18th, which is 65 to 80 days from the certification. So the timing that we have in this resolution tonight, it's still ahead of the schedule that's laid out. And we're going to have an issue if the public isn't being noticed. So I would ask that we follow just the guidelines here to make this a lot simpler. It seems to be a no-brainer. Let's just follow the guidelines that are set out.
So can you just say something about the correct dates? Okay.
So it gives you windows in some instances. We're talking about the first hearing. First hearing.
The first hearing, I just want to make sure that, okay,
So
the first hearing,
to adopt.
it's follow up to what are we supposed to do?
Okay.
So first reading has some.
Okay, so 35, so today,
I'm sorry, just, I don't, what?
no, I'm sorry, let's stop.
Okay, I apologize because the clerk was showing me something. So what I was asking is, did we get the July 1st certification? Okay. So if we go to, like I said, it's a simple chart here of the steps that need to be taken to actually time it.
What day is the first hearing? What is the end of the date for the first hearing?
Within 35 days of the certification of right, we copy agreement you already have, correct? And 35 days of that, certain forms have to be completed by the village. The deadline is August 4th.
For the spring.
Right, correct. that's what today's hearing is.
Right, but you know, right. The only issue I have is that there's solid dates in the resolution that are incorrect.
So then after that, I'm just going to keep going through the dates because you're right, it provides the dates. So, keep going. The next deadline is August 24th. And that's the property appraisal office deadline. Mail officer notice. Nothing else to do. After that, between September 3rd and 18th, we have to hold a public hearing on the tentative budget and the proposed millage rate that you guys adopted as tentative at the time. Which my understanding is not increasing from last year.
No.
Right, okay.
So that's the first date, this first August 6th date that I think is incorrect, because if the notice, if they have until August 24th to send those notices to the seller, and we have a hearing on August 6th.
So what are your thoughts? What are your thoughts on tagging this on to the September 10th regular meeting as a public hearing?
The first one,
The first,
right, and then you would have another one.
right,
Before the support one.
The state's, well, I need to know the county's deadline. Because we need to compile the state deadline and the county property business plan. So, village clerk, can you do the county's deadline? Reconcile it with the state's deadline.
What the county deadline for what? No, I just wanted to let you know the county's budget hearings, you have to avoid setting the same day as the hearing, are September 5 and 19.
So you're good on making the first hearing or the regular commission meeting on the 10th.
Right. So the second one is what I'm concerned about now, so you can't make it on the 19th. Right. So what are we saying? So what happens is from that first hearing, like this one, very much, from that first hearing day.
Within 15 days of that first hearing date, you have to place your advertisement for the second hearing. And then that second hearing has to occur between 2 and 5 days after the advertisement.
And so the 15th, we can have a meeting, what you say, am I correct on that?
if you have the meeting on September 10th, within 15 days after that hearing, you have to have the advertisement.
Oh, okay.
Then 2 to 5 days from that advertisement.
All right, so I don't know when the ads are available either, so that's the problem. All right. I don't,
You can do, well, I don't know what days the commission
the word is
is due. And during the week.
I don't care at this point. What I want is dates that we can advertise. That's what within the 2 to 5 days. I don't know what the advertising window is.
Okay, okay, so the deadlines piggyback on each other. So the first step is confirming the first meeting.
Are we all agreed on the 10th?
Yes.
Okay. Any objection? No.
Okay, so in September 10th, you have to advertise the second 15 days after that. Within 15 days. So your deadline then is December 25th, Wednesday, to advertise.
Okay.
So if we can do that before.
Right, that's the deadline, not the.
And don't think the deadline has a hard pass date. Has to be
That,
everything is in that work. How long does it take to get that in? Once we got through September 10th. We can advertise.
can take a week, but to get the dates, because it's going to advertise. My idea this year is not to advertise, but send a notice to every property. A letter.
Save money. But we probably
Is that defined as advertising?
Yes.
Then we make, okay, this is the other question. We need to confirm that we can in fact, you know, have every single house, which is spending $570,000, whatever. Carol charges, to do that. My understanding is all municipalities, they have that leeway, but I don't know that's the fact. So until we go back to the fact, we have a problem, because we cannot set the second date, correct? Until we have 2 to 5 days after the advertise, we have to have a meeting. That's correct. Okay, so if we don't know the date, the girl's gonna take a meeting, you can't put a second date, correct?
Yeah, you need to have a date certain for the ad.
You can know the date if I have the dates set up with my hair ahead of time and just release the notice.
Whether we advertise or mail, we should be ready by Thursday, September 26th.
Or
Everyone agree with that?
it has to be before the 21st, yeah, or the 20th. It has to be before the 25th, so it has to be,
The ad has to go out.
right, the ad has to go out before the 25th, but then we have 2 to 5 days after that, correct?
The advertisement, just sort of trying to confirm, I mean, the advertisement is in statute, so it is what it is. So that's whether this needs to be a notice, can be a notice or an advertisement. I'm feeling this would have to be an advertisement. I understand that a notice may cost less money.
I mean, my recommendation is, I know there's a cost consideration here, but that's a policy thing, not a legal thing. This is also an ordinance, so this is also, you know, second read, so,
The ordinance, advertise it.
right, so, I mean, what I would like to see is right after the September 10th meeting, that first meeting, the ad goes out, like, within a few days. Because as Commissioner Chu said, that's a deadline, that's not the day you have to do it. I don't want to wait till these advertise immediately after the meeting for the second meeting, so that the time can run from an ordinance perspective and a village perspective. I just want to be directly. That's why.
I'm gonna ask a simple question. I'm hoping it's a simple question. Can we do a draft of the document, you come back and put in a date for us that is appropriate based upon checking all the ads, or can we do that? Because if we can't, then we're gonna pick a date and have to then amend the resolution at another meeting.
Why can't you pick a hearing date now?
Here's my question. If, depending on where the advertisement is, you have to follow within 2 to 5 days of that. So if you put an ad in, we don't know the exact date they take ads. There are only certain days, and they have restrictions for the ads, correct? So until we know that date, trying to pick a 2 to 5 day window after that, she's planning to send it out by mail, but we can't. We have to pick a date. Let's say they can't put the advertisement until, I don't know, they can't take the 15th. That means we have between the 17th and 20th to have a meeting. Am I missing something? So until we know the date we can add it, we can't pick a date for the second, can we?
No, I mean, I would think both today.
Okay.
Yeah, it can't be by notice. I'm sorry for interjecting. I'm sorry for interjecting. It
And
cannot
that's
be by
fine too.
notice.
It's
The advertisement shall be published in a newspaper of general page. Boundaries in which such insurance is circulated shall include the geographic boundaries of taxing authority. So it can't be by email notice.
So do you know when the Herald can take the ads so we can pick the second?
I can say like 5 business days maximum.
We can have it drafted and ready. It's not like, I mean, it can be drafted before even the first meeting. You just can't advertise it.
Especially at this time.
Right, you know what the rate is.
Okay, so would you pick a second date for us that works legally, please?
Well, do we have a date certain to advertise first? Because it goes
That's
off
what
of
I'm
that.
saying.
Okay, so you want to do it backwards.
How do you pick a date unless you know when you're advertising? And that is my problem. We have not done it.
So we can advertise if it's approved on the 10th, then we can get an ad in by the 15th, so by 16th, Monday. Okay. That gives us, well, let's say 17th, the Tuesday, so that gives us 5 business days. That's correct. We can get it in by then, Roseanne?
This is just
What is,
The date is right after the thing, right?
my apologies, Mayor, may I?
Please, I'm sorry.
Okay. For our clerk, through your experience of sitting in advertisements, what is the turnaround for the Herald? You pick up the phone and you call them that morning and say, I need something advertised. What do they say? Is it in tomorrow's paper or the next
No,
one?
minimum 5 days. Business
No,
days.
bear with me, I'm just asking the question just to get
Minimum.
timing. Okay, so it's a minimum of 5 business days, they could say more. Many other municipalities are advertising.
Exactly.
Time, so.
Yes.
Right, so it could be more. So even if we advertise on what day? The 17th, that Tuesday? Or if we do it that Monday, it'll be at least 5 business days before the
Well,
actual.
Monday's only 4 business days, that's why I said Tuesday to 7.
The Herald is very, my Herald is very strict.
So is the 19th going to work
For the hearing, not for the ad.
for the hearing, not for the ad? Because it has to be within 2 to 5 days. We do it on the 17th. We get it into them by the 17th. Does that mean they'll publish on the 17th or they won't publish until Saturday or Sunday following?
What I'm understanding is 5 business days for the public.
Right, but when you submit an advertisement to, a legal advertisement to a newspaper, you tell them the date you want, and they tell you if you made it.
Okay,
You made the deadline, right? So if you guys have your meeting on the 10th, this could be drafted tomorrow. You can have this in queue ready to go. So if the 10th goes the way the 10th is supposed to go, there's nothing preventing the clerk from having that ready to send to DVR or the Herald or whatever on the 11th to make an ad for this 16th or 17th, whichever date the commission selects.
so can we pick the 19th for the second hearing? Thursday the 19th.
I'm gonna,
That's county days.
Oh, that's the
Yeah.
county, thank you.
Yeah.
That is the county date. You're correct.
Yeah,
Sorry.
so
So we can either do the 18th or the Friday the 20th.
it's a 2 to 5 day window.
I would say Friday the 20th, because that gives us a day of breathing room just in case something goes wrong at the Herald or, they just go out on the 17th.
That's fine.
So Friday, September 20th is the second.
Okay, so we have first meeting now is the 10th, second meeting is Friday the 20th. Are there any objections from the council?
Can we also put in this resolution that the date that it's to be advertised, so it's hearing ready to commission directly?
Yes.
Date certain to advertise, assuming the
Would you please give us the language, so we'll go ahead and do that.
um,
We can draft it out as such.
okay, we can do it at the 10th meeting. You can do it at the 10th meeting if you want, so it's not a draft. I'm not gonna draft it up. You could do it at the meeting on the 10th in your resolution, at that meeting during the first reading.
That's fine.
Okay.
Because you're kind of, let me clarify why I'm saying that, because the meeting on the 10th is to bless the first round. And if you're directing her to advertise now when you haven't done that yet,
Yeah, makes more sense.
okay? So, I'll make a note that I'll prepare something to accompany the materials for September 10th about advertising, okay?
Is there any further regarding the millage rate itself?
This is when we are not referencing the advertisement in this resolution, because it's premature.
Correct. Is there any discussion on the actual resolution rate of 9.7 as a max? Max. It can be low, correct. Any problem with the 9.7? No? No. With,
And there's time if you change your mind, that you have to agree on that. This is an estimate, so you just may go higher than this.
okay, so is there a motion to set the millage rate at 9.7 for fiscal year 2000, max millage rate is 9.7 for fiscal year 2019-20? Please tell me if I did not do that correctly. Please correct my language on that, so I don't make any mistakes. Resolution 2019-18. Is there a motion with the amended dates of September 10th and Friday, September 22nd? Is there a second?
I'll second the motion.
All those in favor? Aye. Motion passes 5-0. We're going to take a 5-minute recess if we would, please come back for the workshop. Oh, wait, I'm sorry, that's true. Yep, is there a motion to adjourn? Then we'll take a 5-minute adjournment and come back to the workshop. Thank you, everyone.
I think you're still playing it very close. Giving yourself just one day. Like, you know, after the meeting.
I'll call the order now.
Mayor Truman. Here. Vice Mayor Samari. Commissioner Johnson Savera.
Here.
Commissioner Tudor.
Here.
Commissioner Rice.
The pledge again.
No.
This evening's workshop is on commissioning procedures and village code. We'll go ahead and you do not have to sign in if you want to go ahead and speak. Just go ahead and sign up. We've already read the decorum rules once. I won't have to do it at the same time. So we can start with public comments related to either 5A or 5B. Any comments?
On item 5A, Commissioner Tudor's discussion for meeting policies and procedures, I fully endorse the draft that's attached to the agenda as I wrote it myself and tried to bring it to the commission in March and April of 2018 when I couldn't even get a second to discuss it at commission.
To adopt most of the things in there because they are already part of our resolutions and our practice, and probably could use a few other items to be included. On item 5B, it's hard not to see this as another wag the dog attempt at obfuscation. The agenda item itself says discussion of amendments to section 2-30 of the village code, and it's not until halfway into the memo when you get the idea that this has something to do with boards and committees. So whoever first read the agenda item or saw what's posted at Village Hall, probably even some of the members of your current committees, people sitting on those boards, they probably don't even know what you're attempting to do here tonight, is discuss changes and requirements for those board members that you won't require of yourself. The cases that are attached to the agenda backup, they're cited and attached, they show a clear lack of understanding what the advisory boards do in Biscayne Park. They involve ordinances and Florida Building Code and laws and things that are just not what our advisory boards deal with. As far as having sunshine training for the boards, I think it's a great idea. Our former clerk used to, every year, once a board was installed in March and in April, organize with the ethics, Miami-Dade County Commission on Ethics, for them to come here and give instruction on sunshine to all board members. And if that's the only thing you're requiring, that's terrific. It already was being done under the prior management. But if what you're requiring is what was attached as a proposed ordinance at the regular meeting earlier this month, that goes way beyond requiring sunshine instruction. And you ought to seriously consider pulling that back. It's not what this community is about. Thank you.
Thanks.
Chuck Ross, 11166 Griffin Boulevard. I
think holding this type of workshop on such short notice at a special meeting regarding the boards is improper. I also think that you actually haven't followed procedure, because you're supposed to have a discussion and make a resolution to agree upon that you want to bring forth an ordinance even before you do the workshop. Then you do the workshop. Then you have the first hearing. So you're not going according to procedure. The other thing is, I mean, it's who authorized to bring this at this meeting tonight. I know that you talked about having the meeting for rules for the commission to meet at the meeting at your last meeting, but we didn't. I don't believe you talked about bringing this to a workshop. Maybe I missed it. Okay, stand correct. And I hope next time my wife comes up and gives you some advice that you'll listen to her. I'm really shocked that this attorney doesn't know these things. I've said this before. I don't think her background suits local government as far as being a local government attorney. You're going to have to make some decisions about that. Thank you.
Linda Dillon, 712 115th Street. I've been a member of the code board since 2012, and I just want to let everybody know that every year that I have been on that board, we have had ethics training as well as meeting in the sunshine discussion. So it's not something new. And on the code board, you have made the suggestion that if we continue having a code board, which I understand there's some discussion that you would like to disband it. But that being said, having board members serve one-year terms where we have it clearly on a rotational basis so that there is expertise from year after year rather than having brand new people every single year. I would like to see, if the board is to continue, that you keep that rotation system.
Thank you.
May I ask the question about ethics training? We did have an ethics training session last week for the board members around the first October. Yes. And so still they continue. And I remember most of the people that are here attended that session. And I'm dealing with, working with Mr. Thompson from the Ethics Commission to come here and give another session since May. He just doesn't have the time yet. But yes, I'm working on it. We didn't have.
You mentioned it to me as well on Sunday.
I'm also looking at Mr. Thompson ethics training for the board, and yeah, you told me if we can get confirmation from these 10 people on the date that works, that 10 board members, whatever is of the board, was fine. They can hear on a date certain, people come to us. I don't know if there's any efforts to get availability for that, but that's what people.
I confirmed they have 25 board members.
Okay.
I'm not sure if everybody's going to be present, but summer, vacation. But yeah, I told them 25 board members.
Or maybe you could work this out and mention the goal of that. That'd be great. I'm going to turn to consider this is your item. You have been patiently waiting at what, 2 meetings to bring this one? So, we'll start the commission for item 5.
Real quick, yeah, this is just an item that it's been on the working our culture, just have very language in there that commission set some procedures. Yeah. Okay. Prior commissions have been relying on past practices on the seven benefits in the past. I think we need to get past that. We need to be more professional organization and have concrete policy procedures in place. I know Commissioner Hans had brought this forward 12 years ago. At that time had a discussion. So I think it's something that's greatly incorporated. What What I've attached in this here is just more for discussion purposes. I attached the prior resolution that Mr. Ross had provided prior meeting. I thought had some good language. Also provided the Miami-Dade County Commission, Miami-Dade County Commission's rules of procedure. We'll be able to piggyback off some of that. I think some of the language that's there. But I think this should be the first step towards locking down some of the awesome people that have not sort of conditions, but towards others. Like I said, pretty good too. But I think what we should do with this is I don't want to see the commission. I just think this, we should have a discussion on this. I was hoping there'd be more residents here to get some feedback. And the these residents that were here are very helpful, so I kind of was hoping to have something there tonight. But I like where we get some guidance from the commission, turn this over to the administration, let the professionals do the whole drafting and bring that back to the commission. What I like to see is something come back to us in September. Look at maybe a further discussion if we can, but I think it's definitely longer to do that. Also, 2 years. And black and white, so that it's clear to residents when they want to know how it's done. How many people want commissioners or and things will have something in black and white that can address that.
All right, Sharon, do you want to go first?
I just answered that. Like, there's special policy become part of the charter. It should be an ordinance, it should become part of the code. Your charter says, regarding rules and regulations. Action requiring an ordinance, and it provides a list of nine different ways you can do an ordinance. One of them is to establish a rule of regulation, the violation of which would carry a penalty. So if you want these rules and procedures to have some teeth to them, with respect to commissioners or residents, my recommendation would be that you codify it, not and it's not just a resolution, but actual ordinance. That's if you intend on these policies and procedures having not followed.
I have a question about it because when I first became commissioner mayor, what shocked me is how many things I've seen other cities that are ordained, but in here, they're resolution. And so if you happen to be in it for a long time, you might remember the resolution. I read through most of them. Some of them I thought were passed, but not. So my question is, do you find that a lot of resolutions should have been ordinances in the first place?
Yeah, I don't think so.
Well, let me rephrase that. Would it be better if some of the resolutions we currently have?
There are certain resolutions that these village have regulations. One, I think it probably should be part of your code because they're good ideas and should be modified. Two, because resolutions can be done very easily. Ordinance not so much. Ordinance is other advertisements to parents. So, and this can be part of the review. I know this is just a brainstorming session, but if there are resolutions that the commission really likes and thinks this should be part of our code, this should just be a resolution. Let's talk about codifying them in this process. If they're good, like there was a resolution that came up at the last meeting, it's a resolution, but it's not part of the code. I mean, you may want to consider making it part of it. It falls in line with establishing commission meeting procedures. So I recommend that as part of the review as well.
I think one thing that we want to the attorneys speak that resolutions can be always a nice little recommendations. So like I think we got to get away from that. It needs to have concrete. I'd like to see future commissions when they're sworn in actually annually reviewing policy procedures to ensure that they're still meeting the purpose. We've got to get away from running our corporate government. No offense to HOAs, but running a board on HOA. We need to have the concrete rules, and it needs to have reason why I need these audiences is there needs to be some understanding of a way to direct or curtail bad behavior that takes place on both sides of things. And right now, there's nothing. You need to have things in place. I know at prior commission meetings, some residents were up in arms about having sergeant on the same thing in Vegas. Well, you know what? That should be, I think that should be done. It should be there in black and white, so there is no question. The resident and a commissioner should understand how we, how it should be done, what it can and cannot do. So I think, addressing this now, it should have been done years ago, but addressing it now, I think that will help to alleviate some of the disconnects and some of the angst that some of the residents are feeling.
I like to see you put some money. I like to see you put separate points. I'll give an example. Mine's going to bring up, and I spoke to the commission 205, it's a procedural enhancement commission meeting. When we first brought this up, I think most, they have a consensus from the commission on that can be one ordinance right there. And that can be voted on. Because I think you told me that when you choose something that an ordinance has to be approved by the residents on board. Correct?
No, the charter amendments have to go to ballot.
This would be considered for a change.
But that can be part of your code, which you want, because that's easier. If you amend your charter, that you have to wait for an election. But with the code, you can amend the code by ordinance in just 2 weeks. So you want it to be part of your code because you have more access to evolving it as the village's needs change. Whereas the charter is like, it's like the constitution of your municipality, and you have to wait for an election to change it.
As would be considered part of change.
Ordinance will go part to your code.
Do the wrong.
Yes.
So I mean, it has done their things, which makes them such a program. So that's what. But that should, as the ordinance should get into detail. I mean, so
The audience for how to.
No, they go together.
should the idea behind, the idea behind this is that the charter is itself, it's fine. Like, that it makes, has to go before or on down and change that. So that's it's down the broad strokes. The ordinances, we can fine tune, we can more detail like this ordinance does on exactly what we need. But it also makes it easier so that in 10 years, some of the things that we put into ordinances may not be relevant. So that commission will just have to do a new ordinance stuff. So think of the code as a living, breathing thing, and the charter is fine.
These should all be put into one ordinance.
I would probably go with one ordinance unless it gets so detailed that needs
So
to.
that means that some commissions don't believe that some parts of the ordinance. They can just be breaking it up and pass the ones that we want to draw and pass.
No, really, I mean, just rewriting the ordinance, taking out the section they disagree with, and approving that.
Anybody's this side?
And then looking around.
I agree with you.
My apologies. I'm in agreement with it being an ordinance. So that it has to.
Yeah, and I'd like to see it be very specific so that it's clear. I think part of the problem we have in a lot of things, some of the resolutions, some of the ordinances, some of the codes, items. And I think we should also not be that weird. I think, and I like the fact that we have a first to go to this. amendment went. And I think the only thing I was cautious about from some of my debate stuff is that it's so restrictive and so difficult that it wouldn't fit the colleagues. So I would hope that all the staff, when they work on it, would make sure that it's appropriate for us to meet those times. But I think most of the things, or a lot of things that are in here, are pretty basic labor law things, and I think they would be very helpful. The other thing that's not in here that I would also like to see addressed is how things are put on the agenda. It's handled different ways in different cities, but I would like to see how agenda items are put on. I know we have a resolution, but we don't have what we had ordinances that didn't pass, what resolution we did. And this 8-day thing isn't working. Because that's why you're always behind me on the 8 day. I'd like to see that increase at least 10. Yeah, because that's not giving the staff enough time, and the attorneys enough time to really look at stuff. So I think, I would like to see another part of this, how agenda items are put on, how that is done, so that there are rules to it, so everybody's clear, and I guess.
And the time frame on it.
Right, and but in order to do that, we have to push back our time frame to make sure that we're getting it in the right time, because the 8-day window is not working.
Yeah, for us, we got 30 days before the next commission meeting. So I look at it as maybe there's no reason why we can't get move the dates out, because it's got 30 days. There's no excuse on that.
There's a couple instances where there can be a little bit of leeway, so that if something, a report comes out and the manager needs to get it on, and it's more about what we give to staff than it is what staff does. But I do think there's the other side of that. When staff gives stuff to us, I don't want to be reading a big long thing the day before and not be able to have a conversation with staff about it. So in the same regard, I'd like to see staff also move that time back to the commissioners to review it, to give you feedback, so that we're not making mistakes in the public and having to pick it up during the meeting. And I think that is a problem we've been having.
And I also like I said, to have the residents get more time to see. That's the biggest problem we have, is residents say that they don't see enough time.
Yeah, and I don't disagree. I think we need to be, all in all, our timing and our tightness has to get better, and I think we can definitely push it back. We can't expect staff to also jump for hoops if we're doing it last minute, and I've been guilty of it. I'm sure other commissioners have. We're trying to get stuff in, and we're part-time folks, and we're doing the best we can to get into you, but I think at some point, we're just gonna have a cutoff date, stick to that cutoff date. And that's it, unless it's something that is so pressing that requires an override.
And I think that when I brought this item one, I want all the commissioners and the residents understand that this is looking at broad meeting procedures. I don't want people thinking, oh, okay, this is just going to address the core. I think it should get to the point where, we always point to our rules, but I would like to see us actually have some language in there identifying how motions are being presented. I think the way we currently do it, an item may come up and we'll discuss it for 30 or 40 minutes, and the item may be going nowhere. I'm a much bigger supporter of following the more standard rules of item is introduced, a motion being made on that item, and if there's a second, then it can move forward for discussion. So I think we need to get into discussing things like that. Videotaping of meetings is becoming more prevalent. You look at, towards the back of the supporting documents, back of the attachments, there's an ordinance here from the city of Montclair, and they have some good language in there where, something to look at. It addresses guidelines for recording meetings. We talk about the forum. We actually have a section here regarding the forum in relation to members of the legislative body. We have a section about forum related to those residents who have to speak for the commission. So I think this is not going to be a quick meeting, and that's why I don't want to see this kind of. I'd like to see us come to some agreement on some of the issues that you want to see put into the ordinance. It's a general idea of what we're looking for. You have questions about that. One of the things is that you have language in there about identifying the sergeant at arms and what their role is, and what their responsibilities are. The former law enforcement guy, of course,
being put in a position and you don't know the rules of engagement. So it protects everybody. It allows residents to understand that line that they can cross and allows them to get started arms to understand exactly what is what is what. So it
I know the chief
provides
supports on that as well.
I'm sure the chief would agree with that. Absolutely. But yeah, that's really, you really have to be, you really have to. Once we get done with this, I'd like to see us get this put to bed and then some of the other issues that we may have, ordinances that we need to be made, especially regarding charter amendments. But I think this should include things such as meeting procedures, such as when there's not a forum, how specifically to address that. What, how, because I know that was a big hoo-ha for quite a while. Well, let's have something in black and white.
Absolutely.
This is what's going to happen. If you're available, come in here, and if there's only one person, at least it's on the record. Wow.
There also should be stuff on meetings if there's an important cancellation that is not a foreign issue, that's also covered in other statutes. But there's a reason why meeting has to be canceled, and it's a legal one, or some other reason that should also be true. So I think you're absolutely right.
The good part about putting, if you say putting something on, is there is no rush to be done. Stuff that is brought today, I think is good, and I like us to really take our time, since there is no time frame for when this has to be done. But we really take our time and really look at it, and if they get it right this time. So where residents are held accountable, and so is the commission. And where we have guidelines that tells us exactly what the rules are. So since there is no time, we have to take our time doing it. And there is an ordinance. That's what that's my biggest concern was that we had to have it for, the next coming election and these deadlines. This way, if I put it into an ordinance, we don't have to worry about it. As long as it's our law. And I also like to see us adopt some stuff from Robert's rule. And since I became a commissioner, I've been looking at Robert's rules and laws. And I know the commission doesn't, but I think we should start looking at Robert's rules and laws and see if we got some of the same about that. I've been told that's what we live by.
Under your general policies,
Your general policies include residential fees, but
so are you saying you want to adopt the whole section of Robert's rules that are good practice, so it's codified and
Yes.
clear?
Yes, I'm sorry. I think this is really important work, and I would really love it. With all due respect, to stop talking about doing the work and discussing this, and actually get into the content of this meeting. Would love if Commissioner Tudor would walk us through the, if it's top to bottom, then top to bottom across the ordinance, so that we can review every section of it, or if Commissioner Tudor identified certain, hot areas, if you will, that demand our attention. I had an opportunity to read both of these, but not lay them side by side in red line, so that I could see the differences between, then and what you're proposing now. But I would love to actually do work instead of talking about it with all due respect to everyone.
Commissioner Jensen,
No, I don't have an issue with going right into it. I guess I would look to my fellow commissioner to how he wants to go through it. Whether or not look at the ordinance that was brought up, like one of Commissioner Watson going through and maybe discussing bold points or starting with Miami-Dade. I guess I would look for your suggestion of how you think we should.
and I'd like to make one thought, is maybe we could talk about the general categories first and then go through, because I noticed with the construction orders, we went back and forth. I started with 2 details, that didn't work, I come up with the top 10. So maybe we can come up with the top 10 list of things you want, and things everybody wants, and we can all agree on it. Then have the attorney look at language that would be appropriate for size, and go from there. But I think that's at least starting at a part we can all agree. Because I think if we go through somebody else's ordinance, we're doing the same thing we asked not to do, which was like today. I would rather us take the general categories of the one and allow the experts to figure out those specific. That's
Well, I think, I agree with that, and if what I said was misunderstood, I don't mean going through each of the topics in the ordinance and like coming up with the language. I mean, using those topics in the ordinance to guide our discussion. So each heading, rather than the five of us trying to figure out what our top 10 is, I think we go through, it'll just give guidance. For example, I'm looking at Article 1 of the Miami-Dade County, and if it starts with rules, chairperson, you know, just look at the headings, I think, for just,
So do you want to use my dates as a starting point? Because I think that's probably my start.
I would use, I included a resolution that was presented a few years back, but I did it just for reference sake, to point out where some items are in resolutions previously or past practice. But I think using the 98 county conditions, procedures, and identifying which are, taking a look at some of these headings and identifying, you know, what should be applicable to us, which ones do we want to tackle. I don't want to, we definitely shouldn't get into crafting the language that we did for the construction. It kind of can get very, very down. And I want to make sure that we identify key topics that we want to see addressed so that when an ordinance is drafted and brought back to us, the language in there should give us the legal cover to make sure that it's. But I definitely think that if we want to use the Miami-Dade County Commission's rules and procedures, I think that probably be the best launch point.
Okay, we have 51 pages, so let's just start. Go for it. This is, okay, so Commissioner Tudor, so we start with, you want to start with, one of two citizen bill of rights? Agree?
Yeah.
Okay. I agree. Is that fine? Okay. There's a whole section on resolution of ordinances that talks about addition to options of the, so I'm not going to do it. So, page 1, 2.
Right. Citizen bill of rights, when you say it's good, you're talking about the villages, or you're saying you make?
Yeah, that was anything I was getting about.
And if there's something that you, as an attorney, if there's something you come back and you see that we don't see,
Yeah,
that's why.
we get this providing in order.
Commissioner Tudor, I'm sorry, section 1.2 resolution of ordinances.
So going in here, I'm on page, start. First topic is paid for assesses, chair of the officers. We have chairperson, vice chairperson. Don't worry, I have those titles here. I don't know if we want to have some type of language that actually more clearly identifies, which we have language now. If we want, to add any additional language that clearly identify what the roles of the mayor and vice mayor. I don't know if there's really to do that.
I don't personally, having been there for now 2.5 years, I would say the roles that are in there are not what we want, and clearly you probably could use some help because that's really not, there's so much more that you do that you don't expect. That's really, that most people don't know what you do, because that's not there. I think that would be, I'd like to see that would be,
that could be more clearly defined, and I think it's important, whether it's, I know we have language regarding board members about what we've done, board members, that's all. I even think that we may have language in there for commission policy. And
you have to be careful with the statute, but I
yeah,
don't
no,
disagree.
there
You have to be very careful.
you know, like if a commissioner in any capacity, you know, how do we, what kind of language do we craft to identify behavior that needs to be done there, or how to do it?
Okay, so since the commission, whatever this commission is elected, can't go so far as removing it's sort of very both, the commission flag does not have power, period. But you could put something in place in your code with respect to procedures and meetings to censure the conduct of a commissioner. By a majority voter. For something like that, I would recommend just a majority vote, just so it shows there's a consensus that something wasn't done correctly or without procedures. And that was unanimous. One macro level thing I want everyone to keep in mind with respect to Miami-Dade County's sample, which is great. It's a great roadmap to make sure we're not missing anything. Miami-Dade County's government structure is different from the villages. They have a strong mayor, form of government. You guys have the village has a manager commission. So they're going to get to certain things that are not really applicable. If that's the case, I'll let you know, but just keep that in mind. If there might be some things about the mayor in here, it's not going to apply to the villages because it's the way your charter is written.
I just think it would be important to have, in the procedures, some type of language to where, and I agree with the super majority, to where, because having lived here for 15 years now, I've seen some interesting discussions and things that happen between commissioners. So I'd like to see the commission have a way to kind of police themselves. And if somebody gets out of line, having something in place to where, okay, the commission needs to censor this is what can be done. And it's what it requires. So I personally think that's an important thing to have. I think it should put that little light on in the back of somebody's mind when we're up here, be like, okay, let me make sure that I'm the best example of what this village is. And, everybody should be looking, at us as that's how I should be conducting myself. So, so I think having that in there because, I'm just thinking, I'm not going to be in the commission forever. So when I'm sitting out there, I want to know there's something in place that's going to basically, allow the commission to police itself. So I think having that type of language, and it's not uncommon to see language like that.
No, it's not.
No, I agree. Good?
Yes.
Good? Yep. Agree? Yep. Yep. Everybody agree? Okay. The other thing I was asking, that I would like to see, and I don't know if you thought about this, one of the challenges we've had with it being way too long, is the ability to stop with the policy because it changes every 2 years, and I know that's what the charter situation. But I would like us to make sure the purpose of a meeting is to have village business accomplished. It isn't a private session. It's become that a lot, but I would like to see that move away. Many other cities don't have the ranker and a lot of the lack of business occurring. What should be a 1 hour meeting, assuming there's a staff mistake in this case, but assuming there's a normal meeting process, it shouldn't take 5 hours for what should take a 2.5 hour meeting. I've heard many attorneys complain about it, I've heard staff complain about it, I've heard commissioners complain about it. In order to do that, I'd like to see something in place where items that are being put on the agenda are really business related and not political related. That doesn't mean there can't be an issue coming up where somebody wants to bring up an issue with the commissioner or sunshine violation or whatever that is. But I would like to see that we're focusing on business because that is the reason we're here. And unfortunately, we spend oftentimes, 30% or a large substantial portion of our time not addressing those business. And I'd like to kind of do that.
I would suggest, or if something that would be possible, and then on the agenda, you're gonna have your action items. If the village business, maybe it's just a placement on the agenda so that we get through things that are strictly village business. And the other items that you're talking about are a little bit further down, but it leaves, because what I hear is like residents that can't sit all night to hear the important items that they want heard or they want to participate in, even if they're here for the beginning and they're able to make their public comments, then it winds up where it's all the way down the agenda, the meeting is going on, with discussion on other items, and that resident maybe we can adjust, talk about adjusting where things fall on the agenda so that things that are purely village business are done first.
And I'd like to see the comments, the public comments as well, be put in front for agenda items. And let me just, if I may, I mean, we could spend hours on public comments, and then it ends up shifting us away from the village business. So if we had public comments that are agenda specific in the beginning, and then general good welfare at the end. Some cities don't even have general good welfare. But I personally think that's a bad idea. We're a small city, I think that's okay. But I don't see any reason why we can't have 2 bites at the apple, but general comments at the end. And that would force the most important aspect of it. And this is a fiscal side of it. There's a cost associated with us allowing 5-hour meetings. We should be having 3-hour meetings, 2.5 hours.
My thought on the public comments is that if they're already regulated to a certain time period, if we're saying, okay, public comments is 3 minutes, then to me, in my mind, it doesn't matter where it is, it's 3 minutes, 3 minutes. And the amount of residents that are going to stand up and speak, that's the time, regardless of whether we put it beginning, middle, or the end.
May I volley with you? If, let's say there are 20 people who want to speak, 10 of them are on items that we're going to be acting on the agenda, and 10 of them are on other matters, good and welfare, not relative to what we're acting on, then we have half an hour delay in getting to the village business, because we need to hear the comments that do not pertain to action items. I'm in support of hearing public comment on things that we are going to act on, so we get to business. And anyone who wants to speak on another matter, I don't know if we want to call it good and welfare, whatever it is, it's not the things that we're acting on in the agenda. It's not the actual business that we're conducting that day. That should come later in the meeting to ensure that we are doing the business of the village and that the residents are getting what they're paying for from their local government. At this point, this meeting, this is something that is very important to the residents. How many times was this delayed for matters that we were not ever going to act on? I think at least 2 meetings, possibly 3. So even though it seems like it's limited by time, it's times however many people want to speak.
The only thing that I would address there is because the same way things shift off of our agenda, my worry is that in those comments, residents can welfare, whatever we want to title it, where does it land so that we then don't undermine those other set of public comments and somehow that falls off the agenda? Because you get what I mean? Because if we say, okay, we're going to have those, in your example, 10 residents that are coming up to speak about agenda items, that's 30 minutes, now we're moving on to our business. But if for some reason our business also.
But that's the point. But that's the whole point. If our business can't get taken care of, then we're looking at things that can be done through emails and other means of communication. We're looking at the 21st century here. We have emails, if they have issues, they can email the manager, they can call. There's other ways for residents to communicate, and it's not that I'm trying to stop public comments. I'm trying to make sure, ensure we're getting done village business.
The problem is that commissioners are not responding to them. That's the problem we have. If a resident comes to this commission meeting, they should be able to talk about what they want, within reason. But to say that it's going to be just agenda items.
No, that's not what I'm saying. But if you start at 7 o'clock at night and you're done by 11, and let's say we have a light agenda, there won't be a problem. Most of the time, it's not a problem. We have packed agendas, and that's another issue. We have to make sure that we're having agendas that we can get through.
Public comments is not causing us to finish these meetings until 11 o'clock.
We had 12 minutes last meeting, and I don't want to go backwards.
12 minutes.
Yes.
Can I give an alternative, just since it's the brainstorming session, like the way City of Miami does it, is they break up public comment into different chunks of the meeting. So for example, if there are public hearings, they'll follow public comment for all the public hearings on the agenda. Then they'll do public hearings. Then after that, public hearings are closed. And then, okay, we have 2 ordinances for first read. Anyone who wants to do public comment for the ordinances, please come up. And they go like that. And time permitting at the end, if there's anything that's on the agenda that if they want to make a comment about something that has nothing to do with the agenda,
once they've concluded their business, they say any other general public comments please come up. But they break it up based on the type of item. And similarly, the agenda is organized based on the types of items we currently do. But it's not this like omnibus public comment period at the beginning, because it's kicking all what's happening here, because it's true. You're not getting through your business once a month. You're not. So consider breaking it up based on type as you go through it, or alternatively, you guys need to have more than one meeting.
Madam Mayor, Mr. Carbonell, public comments, may start. How much minutes does it take up from public comments until it reaches public comments?
It's different every meeting.
Can you estimate?
It
Can you
depends on how
estimate?
many people at 3 minutes a pop.
Yeah, what I'm trying to say is that to say that the public comments is causing us not to finish our business, that's wrong.
No, and I think there's in the time I've been here on the dais, during the general welfare, people get up. I'd like to keep general comments at the beginning of the meeting, because most people know meeting starts at 7, I can go there at 7 o'clock, I'm gonna speak on it, let me just finish. I'm gonna speak on this issue. But it's like, okay, well, when we finish everything else and we do general comments, now a person's gotta guess, well, what time can I come here to make a
Well,
comment?
we could do a time certain, that's another alternative, just to ensure we get through the first part of the business.
But
I'm just
like
like,
putting general comments, keeping them all at the beginning of the meeting, or doing it the other way, maybe I would do general comments at the beginning, allow residents to come in, state what they need to state, and if they want to leave, and then if people want to speak towards specific items, then maybe have but this,
Yeah.
and then, so all you're gonna have is general comments at the very beginning. Somebody wants to talk about an item, we're gonna have to wait until public comments for that item. Whether it's an ordinance, resolution, or whatever, you can discuss that time. I personally think, let's leave it at the beginning, because what's keeping meetings going till 11 o'clock at night, it's not necessarily resident comments, it's also the way we actually conduct our business of how we discuss and address items that are on the agenda. We'll talk for 30 minutes on an item, and then somebody make a motion, and there's no second. That's happened more than a handful of times, and I'm saying to myself, why did we just spend 30 or 40 minutes talking about this when there was no appetite from anybody on the dais? And I know some people want to get up here and talk. I'm not up here just to talk. You know what, let me make my motion. If no one else wants to second my motion, okay, then it dies, there's no second. Okay, let's go to the next item. I'm fine with that. And I think that's one of the key things I think that really bogs down the meeting. But I know Mr. Ross was raising his hand, so
Can
let me start on the same.
I just address two things before, because it's been coming up, and you can't do, if you're going to keep general public comment at the beginning, you cannot do a cutoff time. You can't, because you have to allow any resident who wants to speak on an action item to speak before you take action on that item. So if you're keeping it as general thing, you cannot issue a cutoff time, because the risk of that is there's residents who came here to speak on an action item before the commission and didn't get to address the commission. So you can't do a cutoff time. Yeah, 100%. Can't do that. That's number one. Number two, something that hasn't been addressed yet is the commission is losing a substantial amount of time in your regular commission meetings dealing with quasi-judicial proceedings.
That needs to be separate.
I think you guys should explore making that a special meeting, maybe not every month, because sometimes you don't have any quasi-judicial proceedings, but tacking it onto your already packed agenda for a regular meeting, you guys only meet once a month, is killing you guys getting through the business.
We also have public, in statute, and I don't know how other cities do this, but usually it's second reading where people go on ordinances. And we have one first and second readings, we allow public comments on both. And then also, so between the last meeting, for example, we had 2 public hearings, or 3 public hearings, and general comments, and most people got up and spoke about the same thing, it's 30 minutes each, and we were at 12 minutes a person. And then that is why the meeting was so long. And that's on us for not creating a meeting where public hearings are on a separate day. And I think that's part of the other problem.
Can I say a word?
Yeah.
Thank you. Will actually hit on it for the most part, is that the way you're running your meetings, it's not the public comment. It's the meetings aren't run tight. And possibly what you might want to consider is limiting your discussion, commissioners yourself, to a certain time frame. Because what happens is you tend to go around and go around, and as Will made a good point, if an item doesn't have any support, you make a motion, see if there's a second. If there's no second, move on. So that's something that you might want to look to yourselves first before you look to the public, because it's not the public that's causing the problem.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And by the way, if you wait till the end, the way the meeting's been run, you'll never hear the rest of the public comments because we haven't been able to finish a meeting. Thank you.
I think I agree with what you're saying on the motion. It should be a motion, second, and if there's no appetite, done. But usually, if there's no motion, no second, some people want to hear, part of what we've always done is we want to hear about it first before we make a motion in a second. We want to understand what the items are.
Well, that's why we do the packet ahead of time to review.
But some of the way people write,
But
it's insufficient.
it's the way we've done it in the past, and it's not working. That's just my opinion.
I hear what you're saying, but it's our responsibility as commissioners to be able to write an agenda item and present it in a manner in which the public can understand. Otherwise, why are we presenting an agenda ahead of time for the public to be able to see? They should be able to read our agenda items on their face, have an understanding of what's going to be discussed, so that they can make their public comments. It shouldn't have to be where we have to flesh it out and discuss it and then make a motion later and then it dies anyway. So I agree with that, as to just kind of hitting and running, make a motion, second, okay, now it's an item to discuss. And then if it's going to be voted on, make a motion to vote on whatever has been. So
Make a motion to, is there basically make a motion before the item, if there's, to discuss it. Is there a motion to discuss this item? If there's no, if there's no second, it dies, no discussion, you're voting on it.
Like, for example, let's say item 12A, Commissioner Tudor had an item there for LED lights at the log cabin. Okay, Commissioner Tudor, item, okay, I make a motion that we approve LED lights at the log cabin. Somebody wants to second it, then okay, now the item is open for discussion. Everybody gets an initial, everybody talks once, and maybe the person presenting has a final
Yeah, so
input.
a 3 minute per person, and last person is 1 minute 5 minutes.
Yeah, because sometimes it goes back on the phone, I've talked to somebody 2 or 3 times, two or three different times. And I'm fine if y'all want to put a little buzzer on me, so at 3 minutes you zap me or something like that, and I stop. But I think that will, it'll really help streamline the meetings. And I think streamlining the meetings, I think we're going to see that time start.
So why don't we try that? It's not in an ordinance, but why don't we let's try it in our next meeting?
Here's the problem. Here's the problem. Put an ordinance in and you look at it way ahead of time, you decide you don't want to, as a commission, to give me a second to discuss on it, and you come and say, well, there's no second, so I get no discussion.
That's
I
fine.
should be able to defend my item and present my item.
No. And it's actually a common practice.
I know before this election, before this election, when people were running, they decided to stop one individual from running. The best way to stop him was not to give him a second. That would kill his agenda. I don't want to see that happen. If the commissioner puts an agenda item on it, he should be able to have a second, at least be able to present his case to the commission, to the public, and then you decide you don't want it, but you don't. You just said it. You're gonna, you don't want to give a second.
You do, and when it reaches that point in the agenda, the floor goes to you. We can determine, maybe you have 3 minutes to present / defend your item, however you care to characterize it. And once you have completed that opening statement, if you will, there is a motion for discussion. And if there is no second, then that agenda item dies.
I'd like to remind the commission that you guys already have power to remove items for agenda approval. So this is all, the way it should go is if the commission has approved the agenda, there's a consensus that that item has a chance and there's going to be some sort of discussion on it. So in the scenario Vice Mayor is talking about, where he wants to present an item and nobody's seconding it, you guys should kind of give a tip each other off about that during agenda approval to avoid that dance. I mean, as a courtesy, because it would waste time to approve the agenda, let the commissioner think it's going forward, and then when their item comes up, great.
The problem with the person who's sponsoring the item, they have they can initially, before they say, because they're not going to say, okay, my initial motion is, make a motion, boom, to present their item, present their best case within a lot of time frame, and make a motion, because, you know, I may go ahead and approve the balance of the agenda, say, okay, yeah, no, can finance move forward, but once I hear, you know, whatever commissioner's summary, their item, and they make that motion, that has been sometimes at the point where I'm like, you know what, yeah, when you're further on this, I'm going to
That's
second
not
it,
persuasive.
or, yeah, no, I don't think that's, you know, that's probably.
So you have basically two, I just want to be clear, so we have two spots in the agenda to remove an item. The first is prior to approving that item. So let's say I bring up an item that says, I want a new snake display permanently inside the rec center, and there's no appetite to have, I'm thinking something horrible, scorpions, I don't know, in the rec center, and you're all thinking, I've lost my mind, and so before the agenda, rather than waste my time on it, Commissioner Tudor may say, I'd like to remove item, whatever the number is, which was Mayor Trutman's item on snakes and scorpions from the agenda, because I don't think there's an appetite for that. There could be a second at that point, and then you have to vote to have it removed, correct?
You're referring to during agenda.
During agenda approval.
Right, and the commission is supposed to approve their agenda, make withdrawal submissions, solutions.
So-
at the outset of the meeting before you dive into it. And another thing you guys might want to consider is when the item comes up, let's say you get past agenda approval and you're on the item for discussion. You're in the sunshine at that point. Someone could co-sponsor it to show their support at the outset, and maybe that could streamline things, because then you already know you have to vote. If it's some kind of thing that you know there's a consensus on, and maybe wasn't put on the consent agenda for some reason, you could add a co-sponsor procedure in your rules. Might help streamline.
Could you explain that a little bit more? So,
Okay, so let's say there's an item that was on the agenda, the commission approved it. You get to that part of the agenda, it wasn't put on the consent agenda for whatever reason. Maybe you didn't know there was the consensus, so it was a regular part of the agenda. When you get to it, everybody loves it, but nobody knows that because that would be a sunshine law violation, right? So you get to the agenda item, let's say snake, let's stick to snakes.
something horrible.
And you say, okay, this is proposed resolution, boom, 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 regarding snakes, Indian Jones resolution, whatever. And then Vice Mayor Smeary says, oh, I love snakes. I co-sponsor, before it ends, I co-sponsor this resolution. And then, so everyone else on the commission hears, oh, two people are in for it. Okay, what are we going to talk about? We need to have a discussion on this. Someone might say, okay, I make a motion to just approve it.
You're talking about at the beginning when we're approving the agenda.
No, when you're at the item.
So you can't
So you're
move,
kind of
you can't
converting
move
it to
it.
consent.
You can't move it to consent, but you're converting it to or at least giving an indication that there's support for that.
Yeah, it might help streamline things. Yeah, good for that.
I think it's good.
Co-sponsoring is done in other jurisdictions.
But Commissioner Tudor, I do like the suggestion that, you know, you have an opening statement. If you make it past agenda approval, that you have an opening statement for your item that is constrained in time. I think it will force all of us to think very hard about the most persuasive position for the recommendation that we're going to make, as opposed to going on and on for 10 minutes, you know, perhaps in a circular fashion, not really getting to the point and drawing out the meeting, you know, unnecessarily.
Right, we're not
We
putting the
can
items.
almost do the math. We can say there's 5 recommendations on, that means 3 opening statements, 5 opening statements of 3 minutes apiece. Okay, now we know there's 15 minutes out. We can almost start to know how long the meeting is going to go.
I'll make a perfect example, in cancellation of the March 5th meeting, how that scenario worked. That means I wouldn't have had a second discussion.
I think it's completely different.
I think we need to be very careful on that one, but
But didn't that Didn't that item proceed?
It did proceed. But let me ask you a question. In that same regard, that would also force the person, the writer of the item, to be very specific. Because one of the things I've noticed is that some of the items will have an alternative methodology. It's snuck in there. And I think by limiting the time, it forces at least the writer of the item to be very clear. Now, there are some instances where you can't be clear because there might be a security concern or some other things. But for the most part, I think all of us can agree we can write an item so that everybody knows what it is. So that by making that 1 minute or 3 minute presentation, then we can have 2 minutes, we can decide on that timeline. And I like that. I think that will help streamline.
And something was brought up about additions, deletions, about removal of items. I don't know if we have anything, I cannot remember if we have anything specifically that addresses removal of items from the agenda. Because it's been done before where a commissioner has removed another commissioner's item. I personally think that the person who is sponsoring that item should be the one to remove that item from the agenda. I'm not a big fan of another commissioner removing my item.
I understand, but I do think that process has to be there for a multitude of reasons. I don't like it either, and I don't think we use it very often. But I understand your point, but I think there's some instances where, and that's where there's a struggle between let's say there's a legal concern. Let's say there's a incomplete item concern. We need to have some process in place, placing the item on the agenda in the first place if it's incomplete. And I think if we did that, we would be avoiding that piece that you're talking about now. Because most of the time, those items that are removed, they're either removed because there's no appetite for them, that's possible, and that's done in every jurisdiction, or they're removed because there's an issue with that item. And rather than that become a public, half an hour discussion, I think there should be a legal ability for the lawyer to remove an item if there's a problem,
I can only give advice to the board. I have no authority to remove an agenda item. So,
how do other jurisdictions deal with things are also, and another thing is when items are not ready to bring forth, and we're putting them on anyway, and we end up spending 40 minutes discussing something, and we wasted the whole time, and we get nothing done anyway.
well, I think part of that problem goes back to establishing my hard and fast deadline for submission to management, to make the agenda. Manager's time to review it, the clerk has time to review it, I have time to review it. I would appreciate more time on the agenda items personally. I think that would cure a whole lot of that. I do, because it would give us time to say, hey, that should have been advertised. That can't go forward for the next regular meeting, or notice has to be mailed out to all the neighbors, or whatever the issue is. So I think the deadline, working out a date certain for materials will cure a lot of those issues with that.
Yeah, what other municipalities do? I know, I believe it's page 22, item E on the 90-day county. Procedure for removal of public hearing items from the agenda. And they discuss that the sponsor of the items that public hearing shall be brought on the agenda anytime prior to the public hearing. So it talks about in that sense, I think if I'm able to, if I'm able to remove another commissioner's item, I just think it's
You can't remove the whole commission has to move.
and it can be abusive. And that's the thing. I mean,
What if it was a supermajority?
That's such a political.
What if it was a supermajority? Still objective?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, at the end of the day, this removing from the agenda situation will be cured shortly thereafter when the person who presents something that is unpopular doesn't get a second.
Exactly, yeah.
That way, we're not stymieing anybody's ability to at least have their 3-minute statement. And if they cannot persuade anyone else on the commission to second for discussion, then it dies, and we're not dismissing people's recommendations out of hand.
With respect to the sponsoring and the withdrawing items, some jurisdictions issue a cap on that. So let's say commissioner puts an item on the agenda and withdraws it verbally the day of the hearing in the sunshine. But the manager has to, we advertised for it. The village, I had to charge the village to review it, so then it rolls. And then they put on the agenda for the next meeting, and the same thing happens. A lot of jurisdictions put a cap on withdrawing the same item or rolling the same item. I recommend that because it could potentially be a waste of resources for that to happen. I haven't seen it happen here, but since you guys are diving into this, it's.
I just think the easiest way to avoid any type of appearance of impropriety or that it's a political game is you allow the person to have their 3 moments, whatever, to present their item, and if there's no second to the motion, the item dies and we go on to the next one. The minute you start at the beginning, you say, I'm going to remove Commissioner Tudor item, there's going to be a whole ruckus. Conspiracy against Commissioner Tudor, even though I know, okay, there's no conspiracy, this person doesn't like my item, but what I'm thinking is, then just don't second my motion.
Right.
That's
Right,
probably
let me say my piece, let me do my best to persuade you.
Exactly.
Maybe it's not so great on paper in the agenda, maybe I didn't have enough time, like, maybe I spent the 10 days after I put it on the agenda crafting the perfect opening statement that's gonna blow you away and change your mind.
Exactly.
Yeah, but are we all in agreement that the opening statement should be limited in time?
Yeah, I think it should be. I mean, it's.
I have no issue limiting all of our comments. I mean, let's say the example that in the opening statement, whoever item it is, there's a motion to discuss it, seconded, so now we're discussing it. I think that we should also have limits on what we say as well as in your argument.
So like, or in commission comments?
Right, even our comments, the same way we want to say public comments are a certain amount of time, our comments should be a certain amount of time. It should be one round, and the person who is sponsoring the item closes it. And I would say the only exception, if you agree, is that if the person closing it just brings up something that is completely out of left field, let's say they didn't say in their opening, it didn't come out, then under that circumstance, maybe we can have just one more round of comments, just to make sure the commissioner didn't have a reaction on
You
something
could like,
that wasn't.
you could do a short one on the second round, you could do 1 minute
Right,
on the
but it's
second round.
only if
New item.
a new item, something was added to the agenda that wasn't in the conversation. So that would only be an exception to have 2 rounds.
Or there's something modified. Okay.
I mean, I think that would go a long way to help streamline the meetings with that.
All agree on that?
Yeah.
Yes?
So did you say 3 minutes? Or you haven't?
Can you come up with
So
what's appropriate?
okay.
It seems like,
3 minutes.
I think 3 minutes is really long.
But it is, it's quite a long time.
5 minutes is.
3 minutes is really long.
Try, yes, doing 3 minutes or so.
We just say no more than 3 minutes.
And then each commissioner can have 2 minutes to follow or something to that effect.
In the exception.
It makes it, right.
Then, I think the other, that's a big part of what we're going to have to establish is that, and that was one of the biggest meeting procedures aspect that I wanted us to really discuss is, I think that's going to help, like I said, streamlining, but also identifying, taking a step back, identifying, we discuss about quorum, but we don't really clearly identify about meeting cancellations, how those are handled. Even if I'm the, if something happened, I'm the only person here, I'm fine coming in. A bunch of people want to stay in, and we want to quorum.
Yeah, I think actually most municipalities do that. The only thing I would suggest is that there are going to be times where it's not just a quorum issue. And we do have to have, and I would look to other jurisdictions to have them in.
Well, Miami-Dade County has one. I mean,
What page?
that's right, if you're 17. It's part of that 12.02 roll call. It puts the onus on each commissioner to notify the clerk ahead of time if they're not going to be in attendance. So if the village clerk gets 3 emails from different commissioners saying they're not going to be in attendance, then the village management is on notice that there won't be a quorum.
Don't we have a rule that says you need a commission is allowed to have 3 excused?
Well, that should be, on that note, that should be part of what you guys work on here, because it should be clear.
Commission to tell you excused.
And your boards actually have a more detailed provision in your code than the commission does about what's excused versus unexcused. So, we could just, for purposes of a first draft, just kind of like copy and paste, and then in your readings, you guys can have an open discussion about changing language, but we don't have to reinvent the wheel on that. Your boards already have excused versus unexcused.
Yeah, I have one question on that. What is the remedy? I'm just talking hypothetically. What is the remedy if somebody makes more than one meetings? You can't remove.
Child services can be removed.
We can't remove this, that there's a statute issue. So I want to make sure we're in line with Florida statute. Whatever we do, I don't want to be an exception.
What you could do is put in place a censure procedure. And, you know, there's always recall elections. If there's an absentee commissioner who's missed 6 months, the electors have a remedy there. The Florida statutes have a remedy for that. So, and so does your charter.
Like you said, follow the boards. I think the boards have one every three meetings. Isn't it what I mean?
It's 3 unexcused.
But
Excused.
there's a legal nuance there because boards are appointed positions and the commission are elected positions. So, right. So anybody serving on a board serves at the pleasure of the commission, and your code and your charter says they can be removed at any time by a majority vote of the commissioners. It's not so for commission seats. Once your elector votes you in, you can't be removed unless the governor removes you. The Senate can suspend you, or your electors can hold a recall election, and your charter echoes the state statute on that. But that's it.
So what stops commissions missing a line?
I mean, technically nothing, but there's a remedy for that amongst the electors who voted them in.
Okay, so then all we need 2 years from now, what's the remedy? So there has to be a
They
remedy
can
now.
petition for recall.
Right, and that would be a special election. They wouldn't wait. I'm sorry.
I mean, I would suggest if the language is tightened up and we carry over the language that's from the boards, I mean, if the absences have to be excused, and there's a difference between excused or unexcused, or you have to present something. If you have to speak and give your reasons to why you're absent, I would hope that would curtail any nonsense or unexcused types of absences. So regardless of whether or not there's some real guillotine that can come down if they have more than 3 absences, I think if the language and procedure is for the reason for the absence to be disclosed, if it's a work conflict that can't be moved, whatever we want to call this, that's an excused absence and unexcused, and it had to be
So
presented.
what do you do in situations if it's a personal matter that does not warrant public? And that to me is something that you need to address, because there are reasons why people could be missing meetings, whether it's health reasons, personal, family issues, whatever. And I don't think, in some cases, you would warrant not having an excuse rather than reveal that. So I think there's some situations that are not public domain.
Well, it calls into question, because I've missed a meeting, a couple meetings because of health reasons, pneumonia. And so I guess one of the questions would be,
HIPAA follows that, right?
yeah, and that's a question, for an excused absence, can you, and this goes to the boards as well, can you kind of force the hand of somebody to have to disclose personal health information?
No,
So,
yeah.
so you just have to chalk up to be an unexcused absence.
No.
So
No.
that's a little,
Well, then, I mean, then the alternative is it's not excused versus unexcused, because you really,
That's why this is
The
key.
key point is where excused versus unexcused is defined. The language is in here, but it just says,
it may not be.
it isn't.
Yeah.
It isn't.
So
I
that's
just
the charter.
reviewed it.
Yeah.
And so that's a matter where reasonable minds could differ. Some might have thought my inability to find 4 hours of childcare was unexcusable. And it was the fact of the matter, so we need to figure out where this line falls, you know? And that presents another layer to me, which is for a meeting that lasts 4 hours, if you're there for the first 2 hours and have to leave, what if you, you know, fall ill in the middle of the meeting? Did you not attend that meeting at all, you know? So there's a lot around that, but the language of what is unexcused and what is not in there.
And how much is this seriously a problem for our commissioner the last 20 years? I don't see a lot of commissioners meeting a lot of meetings.
Flagrantly missing.
Because at the end of the day, if they don't come to meetings and they don't do the job, they don't get reelected.
I mean,
That's the
it's-
message.
their absence is a public, it's a public record, it's on, you know, the residents know. The residents do have the right, the commission, we can't remove a commissioner, we can't unelect the commissioner. We just can't do that. So, but the residents can, so, you know.
Can I add to that? In a situation, so some of us are elected for 4 years and some of us are elected for 2. We could, if we wanted to give it some teeth, we can say, if you're elected for a 4-year term, first of all, we could look at whether or not that should even exist, the whole 4 years versus 2 years. But putting that aside, if you're elected for 4 years and you are absent from X number of meetings in the first 2 years of your term, you have to run for election again. Your 4-year term just became a 2-year term. Because I don't think people go to the ballot and vote for someone going, I want that person to stick for 4 years.
That would be, right?
Yes, I'm aware of that, but I'm just saying, if we want to give it teeth, then we have to vote on it to the level that it is to change to the charter. But otherwise, otherwise, you could have an empty seat here, which is a huge disservice to the village, right? Because we need to have a majority of vote on certain things, and if we've got an empty chair,
And you're too
consistent.
soon, you could have things keep rolling over. So I don't think it's happened, but it's worth addressing.
I
I think we need to be less, I think it'd be better in the chart. I think what you just said would work better than sitting in groups.
And next month is an item I have for charter to discuss.
So we want to-
I think-
Yeah, let's move it over
And
there.
I think one thing that we should have though is, I think that there should be a requirement to have a roll call of commissioners that are present so that it's on the record.
We did.
Well,
So you're saying you don't think the clerk should be able to cancel a meeting when she's heard from a certain number of commissioners that they won't be there?
I personally think it's just better if they come in and then it's on the record.
Is it better from the residents' perspective? Like, what if somebody cancels work travel to be here for a meeting that isn't gonna happen? And the clerk knows a week before the meeting that, you know, Jenny and I went out to dinner and got food poisoning and we're laid up. I'm just coming up with something that she would know that, you know, well in advance that we're not gonna make it, to not let the public know that there's going to be a roll call out of symbolism. I mean, if I were a resident who had changed my plans to be here, I'd be pissed if I found out that we knew that we were gonna have a half-empty dais
That's,
before you know, when I changed my plans to be here. So I just wanna make sure we're being fair to the residents in that.
And hold on. Just one at a time, please. So certain things require supermajority votes as to regular majority votes. So I agree with the county's language regarding checking in with the clerk if you're not going to be there. Because certain items may need to be removed, not because the meeting can't proceed as a whole, but because certain things are going to require supermajority, you know, there's not enough. One. Two, there's also a cost perspective to keeping to having the meeting for management to know that there's not going to be a quorum, and to have the attorney come and the sergeant at arms come and everybody set up to formally cancel the meeting. It's just food for thought because
you have to advertise, to have a meeting. You have to advertise, don't you? You have to advertise.
you have to give notice. You have to give notice of the agenda. And in certain instances, depending if there's an ordinance or if there's part of the judicial proceeding, there's advertising with it.
Okay, but you come up the day of the event, or 2 days before the event, and the clerk says, well, we don't have a quorum. You just advertise on it. There's a cost. You're gonna ban it. You have to advertise. Am I wrong? Don't you have to advertise?
One person at a time.
if it's an ordinance that was advertised and close to the meeting, I find out that there is no quorum, then we have to have the meeting open and acknowledge the lack of quorum and then make another date.
And there's a difference
Because of
between,
the advertising.
and there's a difference between canceling a meeting and rescheduling a meeting. There may be reasons when meetings have to be rescheduled, whether it's for attendance issues, attorney issue, maybe attorney can't come. There's maybe a variety of reasons why, in this case, we have a whole firm, but, there may be instances where something happens and it's unforeseen. Or if it's foreseen, we still have to do it. I just think there should be procedures that are more reasonable.
Are we supposed to not know who's not attending meetings? We're allowed to take votes. You're not allowed to take votes. I mean, to me, by saying, okay, we know 3 commissions are like perfect examples of March 15th, 3 people are going to show up.
I would,
Just have a problem.
Vice Mayor, scenario, not see that 3 people could show up.
I think we should,
I-
I'm gonna stop here on this one because we've been already advised on that issue, so I think we need to go on.
So I think there's a benefit to at least requiring commissioners to notify the clerk or the manager or both beforehand. If you 100% know there's no way you're going to make that meeting. What the manager and the clerk are allowed to do with that information, that's for you guys to discuss, but I don't see anything wrong with the county's language regarding the check-in. It seems like a professional courtesy to give advance notice if you know, so people don't, so the manager doesn't find out when everyone gets here.
Madam Clerk, you had a,
No, I just believe when it's some item that you need to have the majority on the vote. Somebody can have the phone.
we don't have that equipment right now that works. We've tried that, and it really is an issue, but I agree that if some people could attend by phone, that would be also be helpful, but that's something we also should put in there.
And they should put in a regulation, that is in both.
Yeah, it just has to be in our,
We don't have that.
we don't have that in our.
Separate and apart from the roll call issue, your charter really doesn't give the manager much authority to cancel a meeting. And I know we're having a lot of conversation about quorum, but other things come up that could potentially necessitate a need to cancel the meeting. Maybe there's a blackout in Biscayne Park. There's just examples of New York, there's a blackout. Those things happen. So, I think you should consider giving the manager the authority, even if it's enumerated, and it's really narrow, there's power outage, if we're under a tropical storm advisory, or, even if it's really succinct, the manager should have the ability to reschedule a meeting, and that authority should be expressed in their code. And that's part of the problem with this conversation.
I would agree with
Do we do
that.
that?
Even, let's say, a hurricane, the commission meeting is gonna land when the storm gets here. There's nothing that would.
Do we all agree that there should be an ability for the manager to reschedule a meeting?
On narrow circumstances.
Yeah,
I agree
specific, a
with-
charter violation, a storm, whatever it is. There's a legal concern, a huge charter violation, or enough legal concerns. There's some reason why there has to be, I don't know, we don't have legal representation. It could be 100 reasons, I don't know. But can you come up with very specific reasons that other jurisdictions do that?
I can do some research online.
Very conservative.
Conservative, yeah, no,
Right.
it's not, there's not a broad power, so you can't just decide to go party on that night and, reschedule it. I think very decisions, because I always hear. All right, I know it's getting, and I'm trying to be cognizant of time, we may not finish this tonight, I know we have another item as well. It's 8:45, just to get clarification on time. Commissioner Tudor, would you like to continue on other sections that you thought were critical?
we're going to probably the other meeting issue is establishing clearly defined decorum rules. And Miami-Dade County on page 28, they have pretty standard decorum language similar to what we have.
I think that's what we got us from.
But the one that I like because it goes a little bit further and it basically breaks it out to members of the legislative body, city staff members, people addressing legislative body. That's near the end of this court. It's actually part of ordinance number 03830 from the city of Montclair. It's near the city staff.
Did you want one from Miami-Dade County or one from Montclair?
I like the one from Montclair, and I think that's the one we should build off of because it really does kind of address all participants, and I think that's something that is definitely needed.
I'm
It is
sorry,
going
you
to
said
be
03.
It's like 4 pages from the back.
Yes, application should be one.
Maybe 8 or 15?
Page 104. Yes, page, it's like 4 pages from the very back of that item.
All of that application.
I don't have it by myself for sure.
Oh, I think you're in the wrong item.
No, I don't.
Yeah, you're at 5B.
That's one. Okay, got it. I'll take the last 2 pages. Got it. Okay, thank you.
So I think it's something we should discuss about expanding we need to have the core rules, put it to an ordinance. But I think we need to expand it, and I kind of like having language that addresses, like I said, all participants in the process.
I think there also, as a person having to run something, I think there's also another side of this, which is safety. In this day and age, public safety is important. I've heard a number of residents, will not come to these meetings because they don't feel safe. I've had 4 residents tell me this, and other residents tell me they just won't come because their owners are a mess. So I think the other side of this is public safety. I think your decorum rules have to have teeth in them as well, so that you have to kind of have that balance between that overreaction, right? But that if that is violated, there has to be something that can be done.
Well, what I like about their setup here is that, looking at that section, starting with section 2.14.020, going all the way down, our rules of decorum for each participant in the process. Then going below that, addressing legislative body, and then you start getting into the aspect about teeth and also about what the addressing the sergeant at arms and what they can do and get it to the enforcement of the law.
Which will help protect the police, because that is a whole other.
Yeah, so I mean, we gotta have, and it's only fair for somebody who is coming up there to speak for commission. They should know the rules, the ground rules before they get up there. And they should know, they should know the line that they can tiptoe up to, but they can't cross. And if they do, this is what's going to happen because, otherwise, if we're going to expect a certain arm to get up and we say, oh, if this person gets too boisterous, the way it is currently, let's have them removed. If I was starting an arm, I wouldn't feel comfortable putting my hand on that individual unless there's something clearly laid out. This is my role. This is what can and cannot be done.
I'm going to turn it.
So one way to protect law enforcement further is the presiding officer controls certain alarms, that's how it is. But a lot of jurisdictions have a commission override for removal. So if the presiding officer says, hey, he just cussed out the commission or whatever, get him out of here, we've asked him to leave, he won't leave. And none of the other commissioners agree with that. You could have a super majority.
And a majority have that now, exactly. I don't know if you all know that, but you could override, if I, let's say I throw Linda Dillon out of the room because she's just so boisterous. And I say, Linda, I don't like your hair today. You have to get out of the room. And you all say, you know, the thing is crazy. So you all can then override. It has to be all four of you, but you all can override. That's already, I'm just saying that's already.
Yeah, but there does need to be some codified.
It's a nice check on
Yeah.
power.
Wasn't there a city that was sued because of some sort of movement?
A lot of
Well,
people.
yeah,
I'm just using one case that I heard recently. So how do we solve that problem?
Well, you could get sued today for eating a sandwich, doesn't mean they're gonna win, you know, but you can only do so much to prepare to be sued, you can't stop someone from suing, right? So it's all about putting in place protections, checks and balances. The power sits with the presiding officer, but it sounds like there's consensus that something should be added to this proposal regarding an override of that decision.
And there should be a process so they understand what that override is, because I can understand too that they probably didn't even know it was override. So I think there should be a process in place that's very clear
With respect to removal or in general, because,
with respect to the.
okay,
Okay. I know, and I didn't think of that, but, you know, this is not a position of God, so it's a human being, and everybody.
see, that's part of the problem with your chart, with your code, is that there's all these great things out there, but it's not in there.
It's not,
And it should be codified, so it's crystal clear, and it empowers the commission to take action on it.
it also gives a balancing, which I think is cool.
Because I mean, I found that this one from Montclair really, I think, touched on and covered more areas that are, I think, more vital to the way we conduct our meetings
I haven't.
than Miami-Dade County. Miami-Dade
No,
County
I
is-
like that.
I agree with you.
This
I like
one
it. It's
lays it out.
And it's broken down by audience members, so everyone understands, you know, their parameters. I do think there's still, is a little bit of subjectivity around, personal remarks, for example. I'm quite certain that there have been occasions in this room where personal remarks have been made, toward members of the commission or toward members of our community. So, while that might not be as flagrant or upsetting as slander or cursing or things like that, if we are going to follow, we're going to create the rules, and we're going to follow the rules, then we have to follow the rules. So if someone gets up for personal comment and says, Will, you're an idiot. That's a personal comment, and it shouldn't stand. And the first moment that it happens, if we enact any of this, then it must be enforced. As an observer, I have seen personal remarks slung in both directions with no reprimand and no action. So if we're going to create this, and we're going to indoctrinate, we have to follow it. And it's not pretty, but we follow it once or twice, the behavior will change and everybody will rise to a higher level. But if we just put it in here and then we're all like, well, I don't know if that was really personal. If the law says you speak to the commission as a body, then we should not be addressed by our first names. If the rules say that you could address someone as Mr. or Miss or former commissioner or whatever their title is as a resident, and you say, look, Mary, and you, as a commissioner, say something derogatory and personal, similar reprimand should take place. But it does happen all the time. So I would love to see everyone on this dais at least nod their heads and say, if we indoctrinate this, we will act on it.
And I will tell you that as a person who's had a lot of research, not just with this attorney, but with previous attorneys regarding what we can and cannot do, according to Florida statute, Supreme Court decisions, and so forth. It is a very fine balancing act between freedom of speech and allowing people to do things. But one of the reasons I am a firm, and I'll go back to a point I made before, as a personal argument, because I've watched people make comments, whether it's on Commissioner Wise, myself, different commissioners. We're all human beings sitting up here, and I can tell you that they've attempted to dehumanize us on a regular basis. And it's frustrating that not only do you have to take it because you're an elected official, but that the statute is very clear on ensuring the right for freedom of speech. So you have to have that balancing act. So one of the reasons I am asking my commissions to please reconsider putting general public comments at the end. It will ensure we'll get done business in the beginning, and then the public stuff that tends to happen will occur at the end. And that is why I am absolutely adamant in this community that that has to take place for us to really get to business. And the fact that you're saying no indicates to me that when you ran, and this is a big issue, when we all ran for office, we said we do the best we could for all the villages to bring us together. It doesn't bring us together if we're allowing all this bantering to go on before the meeting. People don't want to watch the beginning of the meeting, they want the end of the meeting, but in my opinion, it isn't silencing people. It's allowing us to do the, it's allowing us to do the business. If you're concerned about public comments occurring too late, we can make a 9 o'clock point, where that's where all general public comments will go and be done with it. But at least give us from 7 to 9 or 7 to 9:30 to get our village business. That's my point.
Can I make a comment?
Go ahead.
So are you gonna?
Please stand.
Yeah.
Up.
So if you're gonna bifurcate public comment, are you gonna give 3 minutes in the front and 3 minutes in the end? Because then we're gonna create you're gonna double the public comment. You're gonna do 1.5 and 1.5. You gotta think about what you're saying.
No, I have, and I've done it back and forth, but thank you. But I will tell you that whether you give 2 minutes in the front, 2 minutes at the end, you still get 4 minutes instead of 3, however you all want to break it up. But I think it's critical to start running like a village and do the village business first. And we can't do that if we're starting off every single meeting, every single time with basically a personal attack. So I agree with Commissioner Watts. If we don't have teeth, it won't work. But part of the way to cure that, without having the concept, I don't want to be here running a meeting where I have to say, you're just right there, so I'm so polite. So, even you disagree with polite. So if Linda Dillon decides that, every meeting she wants to come up and say, I can't stand Mayor Tony's hair, whatever it is, and she comes up and she's personally attacking and she's calling me whatever. Right now, as it stands, we have really no real teeth to address that issue. I can say you're not following the decorum rules. Can you please address so-and-so? But I'm not going to kick Linda Dillon out of the room for that. I'm not. Unless Linda Dillon approached me, became crazy, then I wouldn't have to tell you, you jump up and start an arms and do without me telling you. So I seriously believe if we want to have this place run like a village, we have to stop acting like we're an HOA.
Has public comment been, how long is this one, you say the commission's been on? I mean, we've had public comments all the time. All of a sudden, this is coming up. That has to tell us we're part of the problem. We are part of the problem as a commission, because there has been public comments through all the commissions, and we have never had this much problems.
I don't agree, because I've been around several other commissions and it's been very contentious in those as well. To the point where 2 commissioners, I believe, that there was a violent episode. So I don't think what you're saying is accurate. I think we need to stop acting like a small town municipality in which we have an HOA type mentality. And I think that's where we're trying to move, to run smoother, cleaner businesses. I can sit there and become very strict and run the meeting a lot tighter, and which I did in the beginning. And then people objected and said I was silencing public speech. So it's a balancing act. And as a person who has to run the meeting, I'm telling you, and I'm not going to be here forever either. Other mayors are going to walk in front of me, and I'm going to have to do it. We've had mayors that have been very strict, we've had mayors that have been very loose. I am telling you that if you move the public, the small amount of comments that have to do with general welfare, or make no personal attacks and make there be a significant consequence of those personal attacks. And that's the difference between a political discussion of how you don't think somebody's performing. I have zero problem with that.
Well, one thing in the language here, under section 2.14.030, addressing legislative body, item B, I like the language there because talk about each person shall confine his or her remarks to 1, an agenda item 4 during the legislative body's consideration of the item, or 2, any matter not on the agenda which is within the legislative body's subject matter jurisdiction. So if somebody gets up and wants to start complaining about, the color of, Commissioner Tudor's collar, or, whatever, that's not an item, that's, this one here would kind of put a limit on that, you know, we're able to stop the person, say, please, you know, and by having it memorialized, you know, a person who is really coming in before the commission for a civil discussion will understand what they can and cannot say during the public comments. So I think you know, I think if we tweak this to fall more in line with what Florida state law allows us to do, and what our current practices are, for example, instead of 5 minutes, 3 minutes, you know, a person is allowed to speak. I think this would help go a long way in finally identifying what the rules of the game was and what will happen if you violate the rules. And so I think this is what we have to do. And I think the language that's contained in this one is probably, out of all my research, is the best language I've ever.
I'd still like to see some language that has to do with personal attacks.
And that's definitely because, and since this is something that we're not going to draft tonight, this is something, you know, that's why.
And I think it's here, Mayor Trutman. Is it? Shall not make personal, impertinent, slanderous, or profane remarks to any member of the legislative body, staff, or general public that disrupt, disturb, or otherwise impede the orderly conduct of any meeting. I mean, I would actually put a period in there. I would say after shall not make any personal, impertinent, slanderous, or profane remarks to any member of the legislative body, staff, or general public. Period. Not because saying that disrupt, disturb, or otherwise impede the orderly conduct of any meeting. Now we're getting subjective, like it just adds.
Yeah, but I'm aware of different, I believe you'll tell me this is part of our statute. The orderly conduct is, that's a big, but I would leave that to you. Because that's a whole other.
Just as well, there's, the subjectivity is always an issue when you get to, contentious, you know, when these rules really come into play and they really do. And that's why the authority sits in one seat. And again, they can probably an override to that by a super majority, but there's always going to be a little bit of subjectivity. What one person may think is maybe a violent gesture, another person may not. So there's always going to be a little bit of subjectivity when you're reviewing how someone's acting. But I mean, it's open.
And there's one more thing I want to add because I am the person who is the moment. It falls on the responsibility of the mayor or the presiding officer, which may not be. It falls on the responsibility of the presiding officer. So if there's going to be liability for the city, or you do something that's a problem for the city, ultimately that falls on you. So I am overreactive, and poor Linda Dillon did absolutely nothing, and I just didn't like the way she moved, and I picked on Linda Dillon, and she sues the city. That liability is on me. If I direct the sergeant in arms to then remove Linda Dillon, and the sergeant also will be like, that mayor's nuts. You have no business doing that. It is up to the body then to override it. That gives you all the ability to protect the city. Okay? And that will help the police department as well go, wait a minute, no. At the same time, just so you know, there's rules by the Supreme Court that have just gone through the United States Supreme Court that said if somebody walks in here, let's say drunk and disorderly, and disrupting the meeting, Sergeant Arms or any other officer in the room does not have to wait for me to ask them to act. They may act on their own.
And that's language that's not in here. There's no wrong disorder.
Right, but what I recommend, because drunken disorderly is in the Florida statute, period, you can't do it. And nothing in these proposed rules and procedures divest a sworn officer of their ability to enforce the law, period.
And protect public safety, which is critical this day and age. We are not living in the same world where walking into a meeting is necessarily, because I can tell you I've had 4 residents refuse to come to the meeting because they don't feel safe. And that's our responsibility.
Well, what we can do is you can add a 1-sentence addition for, you know, with respect to in the removal section on page 3 that says, you know, nothing in these rules preclude or divest the sergeant at arms or any officer and sworn officer in terms of this meeting from enforcing the laws of the state of Florida.
Yes.
Boom, done.
Okay. Yes, I think that's a good.
Okay.
And that also, you know,
Also, what I wanted to suggest, there's language in here, with regard to addressing the legislative body, I understand that, but because we're small, and sometimes there may be an instance where a commissioner does respond back. to a resident or an audience member, that the language should be somewhat neutral, but even though, yes, we have the onus of keeping the decorum, or the presiding officer does, or whatever, but that's still kind of vague. I think that there should still be a balance where it is reciprocal. Because the same thing, having no language there whatsoever, as elected officials, we have different rules for defamation. So, we have a president that says things, and everyone say whatever. I want the residents to feel like we're not going to be like that in response. So I think there should be a balance in the language, it should be neutral.
Yeah, and that comes to that addressing, the first name or second name. We can't legislate that, we just, and I think,
No,
I think that's pointless. If they want to do that, then that's up to them. But you're talking about disrespectful and
Yes,
misdirection.
being respectful of misdirection. I'm not saying first name or not. Linda, not mind if I call her Linda, but
She might be
I
professional
just-
as well.
Right, but you might offend somebody else in the room.
And then, if I can chime in on this, because I've spoken with several people in the county ethics commission on this particular name thing, because they know we're working on our goals, separate and apart from all the other stuff. So here's the risk with a small jurisdiction. We all know each other, and the risk. Let me go back. Whatever rules you put into place, you have to enforce them on a content neutral basis, which is a common law term, right? Constitutional law term, sorry. So what that means is, if your rule says everyone has to address the commission by their titles, but your next door neighbor is addressing public comment, the high school kid that babysits your daughter every Thursday, you have personal relationships with a lot of these people because it's a small jurisdiction, you all know each other. You have to be content neutral with enforcing these rules. So my warning is, be careful with restricting yourselves to really strict rules that in a small community, you may, with the best of intentions, violate, just because you guys all know each other. But the reality is you're violating the rules you put into place just because, yeah, that's your babysitter, or yeah, that's your neighbor, or yeah, that's your sister-in-law. So don't make them so tight that you're setting yourself up to violate them because of the nature of your community being so small.
Right, it's not that I want them to set up so that we're gonna violate, I just want there to be something that's about in how we treat each other, because the relationship goes both ways. And if it's only one-sided,
There are plenty of people who call me by my first name who do not know me personally
Same.
at all. So I think one of the lessons I learned from sending my young children to school, to a religious school that contained members of the Jewish community who are far more religious than we, is that we all rose to the highest level of observance out of respect for everybody else. So everybody ate kosher. Everybody wore a kippah. It doesn't matter if you are a secular Jew or an atheist Jew. You are in a school, and we have to conduct ourselves in a way where we do not offend those who are more sensitive than we. So if my babysitter is here and she gets up for public comment and I call her Mary, somebody else in this room might be like, what is that commissioner doing addressing that resident so casually? Is that what it's like here? I don't want to get up there and be addressed by my first name. So they don't know the context. And so I am lobbying for us all aspiring to the highest level of decorum. If we want to call each other by name, or if we slip up, I'm more than happy for, Commissioner Johnson Sardella to say Commissioner Wise, please address the resident appropriately, and I'll correct myself. Nobody's going to be offended by being called something more decorous than you are accustomed to in daily life. So that's my.
and in that same vein, I agree with Commissioner Wise. I mean, I do it right now, and I look down and say, I know all three of you. I refer to you by Commissioner or Madam Mayor or whatever.
And then I accidentally will say Jenny, and I'll catch myself doing that, not out of intent, but out of.
And if we are supposed to be preserving the order in decorum, how do we do that? we're not also following certain rules of decorum. We can't preserve something, it's like lead by example. So we're not leading by example if somehow we're not under the same.
I agree with that, but then how do you address the resident? You say Bob, or you say Mr. Bob?
No, I say
Mr. and Mrs. Anderson.
That I agree
Goes
with.
both
I
ways.
think that it goes both ways. If we want to be respected, we should, as we're sitting up here, the resident should be respected too. And if you have, let's say, Mr. Dillon, you would say Mr. Dillon. Or if she feels comfortable with Ms. Linda, then you could say Ms. Linda, but I think that that's what they deserve to have the same.
I mean,
I agree
sometimes
100% with that.
I have to stop myself because I might get ready to say the first name and I have to take the pause. No, I know them. I have to say call them by their last name.
It's a simple thing, as my customers do, I have kids that call me Mr. Dan. That's the way they look. I mean, that's the respect that they give. So, yeah, I agree 100%.
I'm very comfortable codifying that.
Yeah, I mean, if I were, there's some residents that on an email basis, we don't, say Mr. So-and-so, and I'll get, you don't have to call me that, call me,
They get offended if you call them.
but it's a sign of respect, and maybe it's just a stubborn in me, but I find that when you're in a professional setting, and this is a professional setting, when you use full first names in a professional setting, it can come across as a sign of disrespect. Even if I know the person, I'll still call them Mr.
Every time I send you an email, sir, for the most part, I'm not slipping, I'm trying to make it very generic. It's not Adam that I accomplished in private or in meeting, but out of respect for him, in a formal meeting, I can, oh, it's surname. I agree, I believe
That's
that's
how
how
government
government
is conducted.
Yeah, it's good behavior, and I think on page 104, item A, was the form your temporal members of the city's body, I think that can be fleshed out. Because, yeah, we should be leading by example, so we should be held accountable for our behavior from commissioner to commissioner, and commissioner, especially commissioner to resident. So I think having language in there that fleshes that out, I think is important.
I also may need some assistance from all of you regarding, and when you sit in the seat, I'm sure one of you will, is when you have residents who call out for disruptive, just general disruptive, and they're doing it every meeting. Most of the time, and I've watched judges do this in chambers, I just was in court on trial, and I watched the judge basically let the room go a little bit. And I think that's always a give and take. But there should be a point where if it's very disruptive, it's general, that I have the ability to act on that, but I want that codified as well. So that is a one more, we talked about this sometimes, but we haven't done so in the commission.
Well, just with judges, it's a little different because a lot of judges know that the issue's going to be appealed, so they let them go to the record so that they can't say, oh, I had something else I wanted to say, and they don't let me say it. So court's a little different. But this kind of dovetails into something that wasn't in here that I think should be considered. The ability to recess or adjourn. It's an alternative to physical removal. Not that you shouldn't have the physical removal, sometimes that's hopefully you don't have to use it, but I think you should have it there. But an alternative is the presiding officer should have the ability to just say, we're gonna recess for 5 minutes, everyone needs to cool down. So, or alternatively adjourn, like let's say you come back and nobody cooled down and it's, you're just not gonna get any business done. That's not in here and I think that's something you wanna consider.
We got something next, Commissioner Tudor I've got something next, hold on, it's.
Oh, no, this item.
I'm just gonna ask one more question. So I'm getting instances when I'm starting to do this, but I do do my fellow commissioners assistance on this. When you have commissioners that, or residents that do things that are disruptive, generally speaking, continually, we need that codified. I want that codified as to, what are the steps. I've already done it with the attorney, so I'm very comfortable with what I'm doing, but I'd like to see codified so the next person, anybody else sitting in this chair, knows what the response would be, because that'll also help the public prevent loss. What I understand. There's usually a series of warnings that you provide, and It isn't, but there is also going to be a point where, and your sergeant at arms will also know when that is, but there'll be a point where, like, I've had an individual walk up, practically spit in my face and lean over the dais and scream at me. It was after was during the recess, and I didn't do anything, but we didn't have a sergeant. But I do think we have situations whereby there's not going to be time for you to do morning one or two, or there's not going to be that. But I would like it codified with enough flexibility to allow the presiding officer who's ever in this chair to be able to call the sergeant on if there's something that requires a signature. So I want to be careful there. This is a difference between somebody yelling out, and there's another difference with somebody becoming more physical. So,
For it to be an exception to the warning, like let's say you're just looking at this ordinance that we've been viewing, where there's a section here for the warning. If it's going to be an exception to that, I think it has to rise to some sort of level of being, because again, these things are subjective. Think about it like your example, if it was after the meeting, let's say Sergeant Barnes wasn't looking, wasn't observing, and it's just based on what you said, like Sergeant Barnes. And I don't know what even would be done after a meeting is already adjourned anyway for that person. Now, the meeting is not actually moving forward.
That's where the police are allowed to act based upon the laws.
That was my question.
Yeah, I
How
would
is
say
it
that.
different from that catch-all that they still can enforce the law?
It's not, but I think
Because the only reason why I would say let the police do their job, because we have one village attorney, but still, she's not a criminal prosecutor. Because I think it's rising to the level for us to start making judgments on things that are getting higher, like you're saying this is an assault, or it's a battery, or it's, that would be uncomfortable for us to start codifying how to deal with that. I think the police would be.
Yes, I've spoken to you about this quite a bit. I think I'm comfortable in saying that you would appreciate if the commission left those decisions up to his officers. They know what they're doing. And that catch-all will give them that authority that,
and I, as a presiding officer, have a right to, I have a right to do stuff, or I do now, that should catch up. There's a couple instances, and I will discuss them with you before. There's been some instances where a resident has either physically done things to the room, or there's instances where.
but that would cross over, I think, into like disorderly conduct or
So the police would have that ability. Okay, all right, then I'll leave that.
yeah. But if you see that, and they didn't see that, there's nothing precluding anybody sitting up here saying, hey, did you see that? I just, took a baseball bat to the veneer of the fireplace. I mean, yeah, point that out. They'll take it from there.
All right, sorry, I didn't even go on this, I'm just trying to make sure that it's Commissioner Tiddy.
So I think we've discussed and exhausted that item. It's time to exhaust on that item.
Next.
The next thing, so I only had two other issues that I kind of wanted to see us have memorialized somewhere. And I'll go out of order. I'm going to stick with where we're at right now, because one of the items is, I think we should have something there regarding guidelines for recording meetings. I know we don't have anything currently. It is allowed, and I think having just something there and having that, like in here, they have language about the recording procedure is not distort or otherwise impede the conduct of. I think having some language that's included in this city's ordinance, I think would be.
They also have, I haven't read this completely, so I'm gonna say that there's also other cities that have issues with press and things like that, and they have designated spots. And I think you have to kind of see that there might be a time, not that I ever hope that area is where you might get press or other people here, so you then also have to deal with the designated spots for equipment. Because I do think that is something we need to be very careful about.
And that's what I like about the language in here. It is It's not saying you can't record, it's saying you're allowed to record meetings, there's nothing that can stop you from recording meetings. It's just allowing the commission to say, from a public safety standpoint, or for accessibility reasons, you know, we have some language in here about, you can't have the equipment that would block access for somebody coming in or blocking you, or being, you know, they want to bring in an 8mm camera and start recording, and you can't do that. You can't disrupt the meeting. So, you know, it's more like a, you know, just a housekeeping matter. So I think having some of that language in there, I think it's happening now, so we see it, we might as well put language on it.
From a legal perspective, I think it's a great idea because there's also premises liability concerns with some of that stuff, like, this one addresses electrical cords, for example, if someone's walking into the meeting, public meeting, and trip over an electrical cord because someone has any, you know, all this equipment laid out against them and they trip, they're not suing the person who's taking the meeting, right? Who are they gonna sue? They're gonna sue the village. So I think, this is great, and it's a way to protect the village.
But not blocking lines, not blocking fire lanes, that kind of stuff.
Yes, my only question is, this sample says that the city staff is in charge of enforcing the above guidelines. That's a little vague. Do you want to make that the clerk or the manager or the presiding officer? I would put that on one person, so it's clear.
I think you can say staff. It would be better not to be elected officials because it will be part of that. I
You can say
agree.
the manager or the clerk, and that way if one of us
I think
is
you
out
also-
for whatever
I
reason.
think you also should be able to, because of safety reasons. I mean, you have no idea what somebody's bringing into the room. So I would also allow the Sergeant Archie.
I can say something?
Yeah.
At Bell Harbor, they instituted a metal detector. It's like we have at the courthouse or at, I'm not saying here, but I'm just saying that's what cities in a lot of cities do. So, you know, somebody's not bringing in one. That's, I don't think it here, I'm just saying that a lot of cities have taken that step.
Do we have a wand
I could tell you, I don't know.
if we had to? You know, I'm just saying, I'm not suggesting we do it, but I'm suggesting we have to, unfortunately, and this is the new world we live in. So I do think we have to.
Well, just so you know, those kind of security conversations, it should happen online, it should happen in a section, it's a statutory exemption to sunshine law, because, you know, so if you want to have that, my recommendation would be to do a closed session meeting about security at meetings at some other time.
And I just want to make sure the language addresses it to allow the security to occur.
We can invite our sergeant at arms to bring his perspective.
The only other item I'd like to see us incorporate into the ordinance, which it was in the draft resolution, kind of touched on a little bit, but if you, page 4 of that draft resolution, and it's also, you can also find it located on page 34 of Miami-Dade County Code, Miami-Dade County Commissions Procedures, page 32. Just laying out, this goes back to about running meetings, rules of the thing, clearly identifying rules of the thing. I think we'll go a long way, and part of the reason why I like to see something like this included is, I can see this, once this is fleshed out and it's approved and it's on paper, I could see this, and I kind of talked about this, and actually that Manager Manners mentioned this about it would be a perfect thing to add to a new commissioner orientation about how meetings are conducted. It's as opposed to go get Robert's rule in front here. A little quick cheat sheet.
Yeah, I was gonna
Here's
say, I'll
rules
take
of
that
the
one step further and say that we could each have a laminated cheat sheet at our seats. So if there are any of us who are having a challenge getting our heads around how these rules work, there's something right next to you that you can refer to say, how do I get into this conversation? How do I get out of it? How do I put a stop to it? You know how that works, and it's right there. We could simplify the language even, Commissioner Tudor, to make it a little more plain spoken and less oye, oye.
And I would argue that B for B, I just think it would really be inefficient to do that by the time you second the chair and all that for 5 people. This is usually done much larger.
Oh, yeah, no, I would want to tailor it to what, what we're talking about. I mean, for example, we have item J, no motion or second. situation. Yeah, so I think tailoring it to our size and I think would be helpful to having that included in there as well.
Right, and that would help with the conversation.
That's really the big items that I had that I wanted to discuss that I think need to be memorialized. And then I want to see if any other commissioners had any other items.
So, Vice Mayor, if you're okay.
This is an item that we brought up, I think it's in January, right, proper procedure for canceling scheduling.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry, I thought we addressed that, I thought we were gonna do that. Did we, I'm sorry.
I think we did it with respect to the manager, if there's like an emergency or a or something, but maybe, but I don't, Vice Mayor Samaras.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Specifically, my recommendation is that the schedule, no, that the scheduled date and time of the meeting is held. The village clerk calls the roll. If there's quorum, the meeting will proceed. If there's no quorum, the meeting cannot proceed. If it's canceled or postponed, the village mayor is to contact each commission separately to set for the date or the next week. Meeting should be done at the day of the event. That's other cities do it, that's what the way it's done.
The only thing that I would add, Vice Mayor Samaria, because I understand that for the quorum situation, but we have to think about any other situation in which the meeting might need to be postponed or adjourned. And let's talk about postponement and cancellation separately. Because cancellation means there's no other meeting. If postponed, you still have the same number of meetings, you just moved it to either another week or another day. But I think otherwise we're still having a black hole. This is with regard to meetings being postponed, because our charter talks about not having a quorum, and that the meeting can't go forward. And if we agree that, okay, if it's already been noticed, it's too late to notify residents that the meeting is happening, okay, fine, the clerk opens up the meeting here, calls roll, not quorum, the meeting is canceled. And then, or adjourned, I should say, because then the manager will reach out for the dates. But what do we do in a situation that there's some other reason why the meeting is being postponed?
No, as North Miami does it, you have to come that day for the event. And you're gonna say, well, North Miami's residents don't know they right next to City Hall, and yet they still show up at the meeting. Biscayne Park is small, there should be no reason why residents that I've spoken to say, yeah, I don't have a problem coming that night and knowing that the meeting is canceled. I just think
I've received email from residents saying the exact opposite, that I moved Kevin and Ernst to attend a particular meeting, it was rescheduled.
There's also a consideration.
Yeah.
consideration.
The attorney has to come out, the attorney's gotta be here, the manager's gotta be here, it's not considered to employees. If you know you're not gonna have a meeting for whatever, and you know it well.
Who determines what
That's what we're discussing, like, what are the other points in which a meeting needs to be postponed or adjourned? I don't want to use the word cancel, because I'm thinking about reasons that are just, there's some timing of something, if there's some issue that is causing this meeting to need to be postponed.
Yeah.
And
And just while we're
figure
discussing
out
it,
what that is.
while we're discussing it openly and we are recording it, just so that everyone in the room is on the same page, we've never canceled a meeting.
we have
We've postponed a meeting, we've
Yes.
rescheduled a meeting. Canceling a meeting means it didn't happen and it's never going to.
Did
So
we have-
just to be clear, we're not talking about cancellations.
did we have a meeting, we had a variance that was supposed to come up, and we had to move it to the next month, which made it 3 variances. Then,
It happened in variance modes, yeah.
no, March 5th, we found out that you couldn't do it at the March 19th meeting.
Right, no, I'm saying the
Okay,
variance is.
then it was moved to the next commission meeting. At that commission meeting, we had 3 variances. Well, we had to hear all 3 variances, what happened at that meeting. The rest of the commission work was not done.
Here's the issue that happened there, and I agree with you. If one, we're still talking about postponement, because we had the March 5th meeting and postponed to March 19th.
So what's the case?
The technicality is that there was an error, otherwise that variance would have went forward that day. There was an advertising error, which is outside of what we're talking about right now. I just want to make sure there's some sort of mechanism, if a meeting has to be postponed for a legal reason or procedural reason, And we can come up with a reason that is legitimate and it's not just going to allow, because we haven't even got to the point of whether or not it's administration that can decide to adjourn that meeting or postpone that meeting, or whether or not you do have to have a meeting and the commission shows up and votes on whether or not, after, I guess, hearing from, let's say it's administrative issues, something came up, do we have to have a meeting, hear what the issue is, and then take a vote? Say that we need to postpone the meeting? I'm throwing things out, but.
But that's very
there's
expensive, we're doubling our costs.
So we have the cost, so.
Will this ordinance overrule our charter? Because in our charter, it says the only people that can cancel meetings is, I'm sorry, no, it's because I was asking you a question.
No, but.
Our charter said, does the ordinance will replace what it says in the charter? Because in the charter, it says only the commission.
They have to be, one doesn't write the other, and they're supposed to be right
So
together.
then you have to change the charter.
Which provision of the charter? Regarding canceling meetings?
There's nothing in there.
That's what I mean.
It's absent and it's silent, so I don't see any reason why we should put it in an ordinance that would clarify. However, I think the biggest issue, the only thing in the charter that I recall reading is you have to have 11 meetings. Well, we've had, for the record, way more than the 11 meetings.
This is the confusion, I think, as when you look at the charter, I know I had to hear something.
Yeah.
Section 4.01, section C, so section C, item 1, I think is where some confusion entails. The only thing we really talk about that addresses that any three members of the commission shall constitute a quorum, but a smaller member may recess or adjourn a meeting from time to time, making part of the attendance asked. That's really the only where we really touch on it. So I think that's where the confusion has been coming up with some individuals who are saying, well, this means that you have to have the meeting and basically say there's no quorum.
Because it's that,
Well, yes, but your Bill of Rights also isn't great on this either. It just says a postponement can't be unreasonable.
Yeah.
So, that's the most vague and.
Right, so we need to fill out the blank.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. Now, would it make sense filling in the blank because of the way the language is charter, or charter change, charter amendment, or?
and you don't have to put it on the spot tonight.
Yeah, no, I'm just saying, yeah, what would make no.
Right, we move this over to our next conversation because it's so fundamental.
That language, so that might be, I think we have to have something that addresses that process.
Yeah, the charter is broad on that. So could we utilize an ordinance to tighten up that?
What constitutes unreasonable.
Right.
Right.
Define it in an ordinance, so we don't have to change the charter necessarily, but we still have it on.
I think definitely there should be something there. It just goes through
It's all, yeah.
the whole process. Even when you look at Dade County, like on page 17 of their stuff, they talk about conduct of meetings, order, roll call, quorum, failure to attain a quorum. But they don't really, I'm looking through, I don't see about the rescheduling aspect. So, I think that's one of those things that.
And I think in Florida statute, if I'm not mistaken, there's an issue about just cause. So the other thing we need to look at always when we do this is that we're in line with the statute general. I think that's the other aspect.
Well, some good providers, you could put a provision in your code about at the next meeting, requiring a resolution as to whether it was a reasonable postponement, whether there was just cause to postpone, adjourn.
If that reason that's just cause is something that can be discussed.
Right, so then the commission has the ability as a body at the next meeting to ratify that the cancellation or the adjournment or the rescheduling was in good faith for just cause and was not unreasonable. It was of record in the village's. But that would come up when, like, if you make a requirement in your code to bring that up at the next meeting, every time a meeting is moved, then that's going to be a discussion in the sunshine at the next meeting, and you're either adopting a resolution saying, okay, after hearing what everyone had to say about why they were absent, or the manager's explanation that there were termites, or that it was tented at the time, and we couldn't have it, whatever the issue is, then there's a resolution that's adopted, and the commission as a body is ratifying for the code that it was moved in good faith, it was reasonable, and it memorializes why that meeting was moved, because I think that's part of the problem in the universe right now. And if that were in place, the record, the village's record, the commission's record would be very clear as to why something was moved or rescheduled. Or canceled.
They wouldn't be filling in the blanks, we'd be filling in.
And you would be obligated to have that discussion, and I think that would help move things along, and people will be able to move past things, because we're in July and we're still in March.
Because it forces accountability.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's the big
Right.
thing.
Right.
You know, so that's, I mean, and that's important, because you've got to have, you know, there's got to be that accountability. So I think,
It's a public, I mean, there's a whole closed session.
yeah,
While we're on the topic, I have noticed manager manners that I'm not going to be in the state of Florida on August 6th. So here we have a hypothetical which is discussed right now. Is my absence excused? I am committed to be in another state for work. There's nothing I can do.
And that's a great example where all of us work, this is not a full-time job. Sometimes I think the community forgets that we're not the Congress of the United States. We're a small little village with working people that are your commissioners that have lives. And this is essentially more often than not a volunteer type position. So I do think we don't want to box ourselves in where we're so restricted that if Commissioner Johnson Sardella has to step out on a call, she doesn't say, well, that's not reasonable, you knew you shouldn't have planned it. Your life doesn't work that way. You're an attorney for a big.
We all answer to people bigger than ourselves.
Right, so if I have a situation where I have to go, all of us have reasons why we might not have this happen. I just want to make sure we're not boxing ourselves in a corner. So we allow and understand the reality of what we are and what we are not. Because if you know, you took the job, well, yeah, I took the job as the context of the village in the context that we are. And I think we need to be cognizant. All of us work very hard. I know I do, for this village, to try and help as much as we humanly possible can. I know the manager will tell you that I probably annoy him too much. But all of us work very hard to do the best thing. We all come here wanting to do the best thing we can. But there's going to be times where our personal life, for whatever reason, that's why this excusable and inexcusable, unless we're missing a ton of meetings. I really think that's just ridiculous. I do. And I feel the same way for some of our boards. I feel that language is too restrictive for them. It's a volunteer board for crying out loud. You know, they're discussing what an art program is. You know, just the last meeting, what excuse. I think it's too restrictive. I really do.
To be clear, I think it depends on the board, because the code enforcement board
Yeah,
is
not part of
pretty
the
serious
issue.
board.
Yeah,
They
not
they
part of
can
the
take
issue.
property. I mean,
Right, for our quasi judicial, we have to have that. But for a non-quasi judicial, some of that stuff is just, in my opinion. Anything else? Commissioner? Great job. Thank you very much. And thank you for bringing this up. I guess
I have a question before we go on to the next agenda item. So now that we've gone through all of this, what's my directive from the commission? To try to put together something for a preliminary discussion? Are we going to do another workshop? Is this going to be, and what's the next step? So I know what. Okay. So what's my directive in terms of all the feedback I received?
I would think if you put together some of the things that we're talking about doing without putting the ordinance together, so it's more of a summary.
Like a memo.
Yeah.
Okay, I can do that.
And then we can have another workshop, where hopefully more folks will attend. There's
And then the workshop will be a little more,
interactive.
interactive and will be concise, because we'll kind of have the grid already there.
And you'll have some more meat to the general stuff.
Okay, so I'll prepare it in like a bulleted memo format summarizing what we discussed, and then that'll be the roadmap for the next workshop.
Yeah. And with the content that you might recommend, and maybe, well, not be more than you might have some suggestions on that content after having the meeting.
Okay, I got it. Thank you for clarifying.
Thank you. Okay, we'll move ahead to the next item, which is 5B. I want to be very clear on this, since there are folks here, but I want to be very clear. And that comes to process as well. in the future, I ask my fellow commissioners, if there's something that you think is a resolution that we don't all know that's there, or something that would preclude somebody from doing this. I agree that on a normal state, we should not be writing ordinances without the appetite for the whole commission. However, I sponsored an item that was upon advice of council because we are having issues. And that is how that went forward. I am going to turn it over to the attorney because it is the attorney's item. And I don't want to preclude, I will tell you what my sections were that I added, but ultimately this is the attorney's item. So, turn it over.
So the village in general needs to tighten up their boards. I know that here and there I've had discussions with a commissioner here or there, or a manager about it as the issues have arisen, but the boards need, the code needs to be really buttoned up as to your boards. I don't want to believe the point. I know it's 9:41 and we kind of did this dance at the last meeting, so I'm prepared to answer questions about it, clarify things if I wasn't here before, but it's here for discussion, so maybe we just dive into the discussion. I did, it's sponsored by the owner.
No, it's sponsored by me, the attorney, brought up some major issues that we're having. And I sponsored the item for the attorney, just like I could sponsor an item for a resident, I could sponsor an item for, which we have done in the past. I'm gonna make one comment in here that I think you might want to consider changing. And that was one of the objections that were brought up by several of the residents. And that has to do with sitting out after a year, for the board. I know that if you run for office, we already have that language in. That isn't something that we did, that was something that was already done. But I think it was Ms. Gordon, am I correct? Do you want to restate your objection so we can address it just to be clear? Restate the objection that you had regarding the appointment of the time frame. I know you were going to be able to forward. No, you had, there was an issue of sitting out, and I'll let the attorney address it if not.
I remember it.
What had?
There was, I'm not sure it was you, Ms. Dillon, but there was a resident at the last meeting who expressed a concern about the 1 year prohibition on being on board if you basically quit. And there's a potential timeline issue because I think it's your February code, you only do appointments in March. So,
well, we do reappointments in March, but we do appointments anytime there's a vacancy.
Okay, so that's a point that a resident in public comment the last meeting raised concerns about, because they don't want, if something happens and someone gets a board, are they going to be frozen out? Let's say that happens in February, if they wanted clarity, would they be frozen out for the next March? You know, that was the resident comment on that.
That was part of it. The other part was that if he's on one board, he can't be on any board for his life.
Right.
Yeah, and that's the problem with some people, like, for example, let's say you're on one board and you decide you want to switch to another because an open became available. I think that's something that we should allow, because ultimately that's fine. I do think, however, when people run for office, that's when this first came up, that they have to resign from the board and not go back to that same board for over a year. And I think we should separate them out between somebody who's running for office and somebody who's in a community.
When I left to run the first time, when I left to run the first time from the recreation board, I was allowed to go back on the recreation board the next time.
That was before, and it subsequently was changed and it's already there. So that's already in play now. And I'll give you, for example, Mr. Susi, who ran for office, he was allowed to go on a different board, but he was allowed to join the same board because that wasn't the case.
Okay. I'm sorry, what section are we under, just so I can?
Oh, I'm trying to find it now.
I know this is a general discussion, but you referenced it as something, so I wanted to-
We already have it in our code now, and I have to get it. I don't have it in front of me to read it, I'll see if I can find it.
I found it, page 6.
Okay. The way it works now for elected officials is if you run for office and you're on a board, you immediately resign from that board. And then you have to, 1 1 year later, you can apply for that same board. However, it does not, in that language, preclude that person from going to another board. So let's say you run for office and you resign from the board in August, let's say, and you don't get elected in November. You can, in December, you can reapply to a different board, any board, but just not that same board. And that's the rules. I didn't make them. That's already in. That's already set.
Why can't the person go back to saying no?
I can't answer what was done historically because I wasn't part of that. So no, I can't.
Well, can we debate now, what are the merits? We're taking someone who's got institutional knowledge and denying the village the benefit of their experience. So, I mean, if there's a reason, like I said, even if you're not aware of why it's drafted that way, but if you're doing so great on that particular board, or then people are like, you should run for office, and then you go for it and it doesn't work out for you, why should you not be able to return to service the village in the same capacity? It would seem that it hurts the village. Whether it hurts the individual or not is neither here nor there. I think we have to think about the village first. It seems like
And you're correct, because that proves the point, because the recreation board, because I could not go back on that. The recreation board, oh, that could be anybody else. That's something that shouldn't have happened. Now, of course, I would like to have had other people to participate, and that shouldn't happen, if other people participate, but if you don't get people.
I mean, that's another option. Nothing said,
To me, in my mind, unless we can articulate a real conflict of interest, there's something about you were a candidate or you were elected, and you can't go back. If we can't articulate really a reason as to why it's not a good idea for someone who ran as candidate, and you can't go back to that board. I don't hear.
I'm gonna throw something out there that I don't necessarily agree with, but I'm gonna throw it out. I can imagine where somebody might think that that person took an adversarial position towards some of the people that they got elected. But then we still can remove them, so we need the commission. So I can see.
Okay, so so that person was on board, doing a great job, ran for office, didn't get elected, now holds a grudge against everyone who did, and is going to return to a board that is supposed to be in service of the people that they resent.
I'm giving you, I'm just giving you an argument for it.
The same board, but if they go to another board, there's still.
It's the same difference.
Yes,
exactly.
It's the same difference.
Yeah. And you can still remove any board member for any reason, so even constitutional boards.
You can do that now. Right. You don't have to give a reason now. But that's what your code, that's the code you have now, says if you're running.
But I mean, it's on the books, okay, fine, but I was just trying to.
I don't have any idea how it happened, but I didn't, because there's a lot of people came up to the board and they kept thinking that the attorney had stuck with something in there that wasn't there before. I think the only change in language was not with the fact that you didn't specify the board, but it was already there, is my point.
It's possible to, what is the reason would be for a person that's on the board, running for office for the rest of the time? Because the reason I'm bringing that up is you might stop getting, people that are on boards might be great candidates, who will not run because they don't think that they're going to get elected, and you don't want to lose that one. You want to stop
running for office, so.
Yeah, I think it's appropriate at that point, because you just don't know. If you're running, this is a discussion when we go for the charter, of how we handle seats and things like that. That may change some of this, but for now, I would say I still think that's a good.
So, with respect to public office, that is a standard policy. If you, let's say you are you're elected to, you're elected, judge, and you want to run for something else. Most places require you to resign because you can't simultaneously hold a position and run. Now, there's a really good policy argument that's being read around about what if they were really good at that and they just happened to lose the election and they wanted to there's nothing preventing the commission from tweaking this to say that there's this the commission has the ability to reinstate after that. I would, because maybe someone is great.
So if the commission doesn't like that language, this isn't just about additions, it's also about removal, you know, this is about amending it all together. So if the commission doesn't like that, maybe explore a reinstatement provision if that person isn't elected.
Unless we can come up with.
If the seat's still vacant.
If there's no reason sitting here that we can come up with, unless we haven't thought of it, I don't see a reason why we can't reinstate something to the board, and Mr. Susan was very example of that. We couldn't go back to that board because why? Because there was some rule that says you couldn't. So I don't have a problem. But that was one of the objections, and I want to address that first. If there's no objection, is there a consensus commission to have a look at that and see whatever, and see what other cities, what are best practices?
Perhaps it was crafted in a time where there was a line around the block to sit on the boards. And it was like, you stepped out, it's my turn now. We don't know, but yeah, I mean, it's worth revisiting.
So
Just revisit it and let us know if there's anything that we're missing.
putting a reinstatement by majority vote, like catch-all division, once the election's over.
There was also an objection to the idea of conduct unbecoming.
I can speak to that. It actually was interpreted conversely as to what the intent was. So right now, your code gives the commission the authority to remove anyone for any reason. You don't have to give a reason. So I added proposed language. Okay, that's on page 12.
Thank you.
Conduct and ethical standards, and then
Yes, that's 12G, it's under G. You know, I thought,
yeah, removal.
yeah, I thought about this a lot, and I just don't think it should be there. The reason I don't is because at the end of the day, the boards have to work in conjunction with the commission. And if we do this, it's the same issue I have with removing a manager, is you have to sit there publicly, go after a person in public, and I just think that's miserably uncomfortable for everyone. And I just don't think it's helpful. So I guess after revisiting it in my mind, I just don't think it should be there either. I think you should be able to remove a board member because you want other board members. I just think it leaves, and I don't think most of us, and the history of this village, we have not been removing board members regularly. That's not the vacation.
Okay, I just want to clarify for the commission, I did not add that for the reasons that were not even implied, but alleged by the residents of the last meeting. It wasn't to stifle free speech, it was the opposite. It was to make the commission accountable as to why they were removing someone who was appointed to a position. Because your current version, just so you know, doesn't require any, you can do whatever you want. And if you wanted to say that way, that's fine, but that would have reined it in a little bit, so I don't know.
I'll leave it to my fellow commissioners, but I think one of the issues we have is I'd like to see the boards work. I think we need to work towards making these boards really impactful and working with the commission to be on the same page. Right now, I think we have almost like a shadow commission in the sense that some of these boards are doing what they want over here, and we don't even know what's going on. And I think that's part of my issue overall. And I'd like to see that tightened so that we'll work effectively and efficiently. And
Mayor, does that not speak to a different issue? That's when we talk about removal. I mean, conduct about the comment, you should keep showing up. I'm gonna say something nuts just so that we don't speak about something that could be interpreted any other way. You keep showing up at board meetings like pants, you know, and you just can't do that. So can we not all come together and say, there's been 6 meetings, no pants, you're off? That's different than what you're raising, which is what it sounds like the business of the boards are not transparent to or in service of the goals of the commission. That's separate, is it not?
Well, what you have right now, it's on page 3, subsection 5. That this is what you have right now, removal. Board and committee members may be removed at any time by a majority vote of the village commission. That's all your code says right now. So since there's a lot of talk about the ambiguity of the authorities and restrictions in the code.
Conduct unbecoming is a narrower needle to thread.
Right, but maybe you don't want it that narrow because someone's showing up with no pants. I don't know. But
So that's not enough.
but I mean, I think you could be with what you have now. You don't have to give a reason. You just have to call it up for a vote.
That's it. I don't know if people are comfortable with that.
I'm a little uncomfortable, because I thought about it, and that makes more sense, because then you can't just willy-nilly come in, you don't like somebody, I'm gonna put my friend in. I like that idea of that, but then the more I thought about it, in order to do that, you have to have some rationale to openly then go after that volunteer to say, you know, you weren't wearing pants, what's your problem? Well, you have to go after them. I don't like that.
You should be able to, you have to give an explanation of why you want to.
But that puts that other person, and they're volunteers for a board. It's like the same idea, I have the same issue with the managers. You have to have a public hearing, and to me, it's, even though it's in the sunshine, you're going after why somebody's not there.
Accountability sucks.
But there's liability with that too.
But you're on the board, you're, you know, responsible for sunshine, you've got all the other burdens. Behavior becoming someone who serves their village in an official capacity, that's the mantle. And if you conduct your behavior in a way that is unfit for the position, then it's the only appropriate way to do it is fair.
Is that the only reason you want to be able to move somebody?
Is that the only reason?
So let's say I decide, that person, no, let's say this person, Johnny Smith, is on the board, they just do nothing on that board. They're not coming and becoming, they're very polite, but they literally come there and do nothing. I, as a commissioner, want this board to be more effective, I want to change the board. It's not conduct unbecoming, it's a different reason why I want the board to be.
Well, then we might want to enumerate reasons. If it's failing to conduct the business assigned to them, that's tangible, that's subjective. I gave you, you know, an assignment, I asked you to do X, Y, and Z. It's been 3 months, you haven't done X or Y or Z. I'm gonna give you 2 more weeks if it doesn't happen, opportunity to cure, if it doesn't work out. You're not doing the job that was assigned to you.
So you're saying that if the commission doesn't agree with the board member for any reason, you can just say, I want your help.
Now you do that.
That's how it is now.
That's how it is now. Right, I'm saying, hopefully, you're right, that's exactly.
So how do we have that? How do we have that in the sunshine? You know, we're taking you off, we don't really need to tell you why. I mean, that's, you know,
I wish we would go back.
totalitarianism.
I wish we could go back to the old way we used to be, where each commissioner got to pick a board member. And that board member would bring upon to that board on what that commission wants, what the commission's goals.
That goes to this charter structure.
That's how we used to do it, had advantages, but also had high disadvantages.
No, this commissioners didn't want to do their job. I'm saying, past commissioners, that was the reason why it stopped, is because certain commissioners.
No, there were other issues that came up. I was on a board that had several of those issues, and I'm not gonna get into it, but I will say that there were other issues associated with, it wasn't about the board being effective, it was about making sure your perspective was being held on that board. A perfect example, I was, for the rec board, I was picked by Commissioner Cooper. And I got to meet with Commissioner Cooper 3 times before the board met. I got to discuss what's important to you, since I represent you, what's true, and what's in it. That's the purpose of it. I mean, the board is supposed to represent what we want as commissioners. Am I wrong? No, you're correct. Okay, so as each commissioner gets to pick a board member, that board member would basically represent that commissioner. And at the same time, that commissioner will be paying attention to what that board member does and what that board does. And I think we should go back to.
We could establish the same thing by having, you know, a designated member of each board, report to each commission at every commission meeting. There doesn't have to be a one-to-one relationship.
Alternatively, you could have each commissioner assigned as the overseeing commissioner to a board. Yeah, you know, because
Tracy.
you guys have a lot of boards.
Make a comment when she's done.
What you said?
That was it. No, just brainstorming. That's an alternative.
Yeah, you could ask one person in charge of the board.
Okay, so I think what Dan is trying to say is that you can have a situation where the minority is not represented because the majority is always controlling who's on the board. So each commissioner gets to pick their own board member, then the minority gets represented, otherwise possibly have an equitable position. Thank you.
So, yes, Vice Mayor Emeritus.
Yes, ma'am. That's right. And it also makes the commission do its job. It needs to keep an eye on the board and stuff.
I understand, I understand.
I don't mind having a commissioner kind of having a little oversight of each, oh, you've got park department. That I don't see an issue with. I'm more comfortable with that. The one thing that I can see the argument being with the way a commissioner, okay, commissioner's here, I pick my guy for this board. The way it is now is when you get a pool of volunteers and the commission comes up here and select and decide on who we're going to appoint. To me, it creates more of an independent board as opposed to somebody who feels like they're accountable to solely represent my needs and my needs only. I don't really want that. I want an independent board of individuals who don't believe anything.
And then there's also becomes adversarial. Let's say Commissioner A, applicant A, and Commissioner C picks applicant C, and then Commissioner A and Commissioner C hate each other. It automatically sets up that board to have opposing viewpoints before they ever get out of the door, and that could happen quite a bit, in my experience.
You want to pick one commission, I think the attorney's idea of having one commission represent that particular board. What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to get what commissioners, even though we have a lot of work on personal, that we pay attention to what the boards are doing. And I think maybe one commissioner being assigned to, let's say, code, or one commissioner being assigned to this.
Let's think about that. That's not on tonight's agenda, but let's think about it. No, I understand your points.
Well, and with that said, I think probably we have to address, the item F with the communications. Because we're gonna contemplate whether or not commissioners are going to oversee a particular board. And, because I think also this communication item was also something that, there was some public comments on. It being a little restricted. I think it's on page 11 and 15.
Okay.
Item F.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I think, and I'm going to have the attorney address this. This was the main, I think, driving force behind the entire piece, which is that, and this is critical. We right now have people communicating outside the boards that may not be following the statute, and I think the intent here is to ensure all communications are saved and captured in the server. And this was brought to my attention for a couple of things that happened, and then I know the attorney and I discussed this, the mayor and I discussed this. Our boards are not, just because we're small, which is what one of the comments was that was very disturbing, was that, well, we're small, we don't have to follow those rules. Yes, you do. And I think the attorney said it best, and she said there's no carve out for a small city. You can't change the law because we're small and it's burdensome. I agree, sunshine is very burdensome. It frustrates a lot of us sometimes, but at the end of the day, it's the law. So I'll turn this over to the attorney on this one.
I think, yes, for me, that these issues arising with respect to the sunshine issues arising with respect to the board is really the genesis of the need to revisit this provision of the code. I have very serious legal concerns about our ability to capture and save board communications. First of all, they really shouldn't be happening outside of the sunshine anyway, but I have serious concerns that they are, and that they're not being saved anywhere. And my concern is, when the village gets public records requests for these for board records, we have to produce them. And if we don't have them, because there was no mechanism in place in your code to instruct the board members what they can do, how they should be saving, and should they be CCing the manager or the clerk? Should they be emailing at all? Is it a sunshine violation? And from what I could gather from the public comments at the last meeting on this provision, I just think it's a lack of training. I think there needs to be more sunshine law training for the boards. That's why there's that whole ethics and sunshine law section and the requirement to do it at least once a year and check it with the clerk to confirm that you did it. Because with all the boards, with the exception of the code board, that liability could pass to the village. Now, with the code boards, it could pass to individual board members. That's what the statute says. But
I think that just so everybody hears, because this is very important.
okay, so code board is a heightened board, right? They have the ability to subpoena people, call people to testify, lien property, which is a very serious, authority to be given by a municipality, particularly in a municipality like this, where you guys have a lot of homesteaded properties. These are people's, homes. They're on vacation homes, they're on investments for the most part. So it's a heavy authority, and the statute governing code enforcement boards, it's heavy. It's pretty heavy-handed with what that authority comes with, and sunshine law violations for individual code members can impugn criminal liability on individual code members. And I don't think they know that. And that is something that we need to do a better job of protecting them with.
Yes, we do. Just could you let her finish, and then you're welcome to come up.
Okay, so my concern is that I've seen email communications to the code enforcement officer for the code board about code violations or belief code violations. Those should be totally separate. There should be no email communications from any code board member before a code board meeting outside the sunshine about a potential matter that may come before that board. They're basically judges. And I think there needs to be better training on that. And I'm not saying there's any malice to it. I just don't think there's sufficient training for the heightened authority that the commission has given these board members. So if you don't adopt any of these proposed changes, my recommendation is you do exit the code board to protect the code board members. They're held to a higher standard than the other code board members, the members of other village boards.
Go ahead, Ms. Dunn.
I'd like to take exception to what you're saying, because in my 12 years of code board, I have never seen an email from any other board member regarding any cases. Any emails have been perhaps from the code enforcement officer to us talking about cases that are coming up, but they're only like agenda items and things like that. To my knowledge, there's never been a violation from anyone since I've joined the board. And annually, we have had training on sunshine laws.
And to clarify, I've never seen one of those emails come from you or have you on them, just to be clear. And then go to
Yeah, Ms. Dillon, I think you're probably an exception to the rule on that. If this does happen, we have several board members who are constantly emailing or the code officer. And so from that perspective, they shouldn't be doing that. There should be that line drawn between the two, if I understand that correctly.
yes, it's a potential due process issue.
I know some of the questions are.
This is specifically, because we just want to make sure we're clear, it's specifically conversations that are with the code officer that are before hearings on particular items that are going to be heard at that hearing because of the prosecutor's staff.
Or potentially creating a violation that will end up coming before them. Because the genesis started with a code board member email code enforcement about a potential code issue. You see how it's circular? And then the risk there, besides the potential due process issue between that, is when the item comes before the board, are they accusing themselves? Are they doing a Jennings disclosure about those communications?
The issue from the resident standpoint would be individual A reported me for the code violation, and individual A sitting in judgment.
And drop the
code
hammer on
violation
it,
that they just reported me. Yeah, I can see where that can, I can see the difficulty in that respect.
Then I probably would suggest, because I'm looking at the language here on page 11 and 15. And my suggestion is, yes, it's tailored to not, so that sunshine violations are not, created or caused. It still seems a little heavy, and I want to ask you this as to whether or not, since it's a sunshine violation, let's talk about the topic first of like designating just the chair to be communicating with either the clerk or the village manager. If it's any other board member that's communicating with the clerk or the village manager, that's not a sunshine violation, if I understand it.
Right, provided that they're not, basically having communications with other board members using the manager as a conduit or the clerk as a
And
conduit.
the reason why I say it is because each of us as commissioners can email the village manager or the clerk. We don't, and we couldn't, how could we designate, let's say, the mayor to be the only one emailing the village manager or the clerk? Because the only time we talk is at a commission meeting, so what would she communicate?
So
I don't have an issue making sure that board members understand that you can't use the village manager or the conduit, just whatever the standard is and the same standard that we follow. I'm fine with. Now, if we have to have a separate resolution or something for the code books, I agree with you. Yeah. The sunshine rules are hard to understand even for lawyers, lay people. So the code board being that type of quasi-judicial board, I think, yes, there has to be more care that those board members don't violate it, because you have residents that can take things on appeal. It's really an issue that's personal to that board member. But I think for regular boards, if we tailor this, whatever we have to do as commissioners to not violate sunshine, it should be the same for the boards. So I don't think it needs to be more stringent.
But we have email addresses that always end up in the server.
Yeah, but they can have email addresses as well, each board member. And they communicate with the clerk or the manager through that village email.
I like that idea, and that kind of goes into the other reason this language was crafted is we need some sort of storage for those communications. Right now, using personal emails,
I don't think we should allow personal emails to be used, period.
That would really solve most of the issue. Is if board members were, board member email one, and however you guys want to do it.
I'm sorry, Vice Mayor. The only reason why I stated it, because like if I'm looking at F3, sending an email from an official designated email by an individual other than the chair, strictly prohibited, like it's so strong, and I'm like, that is more than what we do as commissioners. We just have to, because if I hear what the intent is and the purpose is to avoid the sunshine violations, the purpose is to be able to capture messages for public records requests, it doesn't, like, this level isn't required to do that. You just have to be sure that it's an official email and that they know that they can only communicate with the village manager and clerk, not to each other, and not using it as a conduit. I think because I think it's a shock to the system maybe for some board members when they're reading this, like.
There's the only other option is to force the BCC, but then you really don't know. And that, in other words, I think we have this now a little bit, forgive me, but I don't think we should be using our personal emails ever once you're elected official. The question becomes, and there's kind of a couple avenues you can take with this. You can assign everybody an email, which may or especially for the quasi-judicial boards, I think that's the critical mass there. And then any communications they have regarding village business needs to go to that particular email.
That would result in the concerns that I had about the emails being saved for public records request purposes. If every board member had an assigned village email, that would solve the issue.
And they would have to, anything they do with the boards, they have to use that email, period. And that includes the commission should be in the same, commissioners should have the same requirements. That if for some reason, because I've had people accidentally email me and I immediately forward it to the village. I'm sure other people sitting here have had the same situation who were commissioners, but everything I do is through that village server. Everything. And I think that's something we need to do, not just for the boards, but for every commission hearing in the future. I think that should be a mandatory piece.
I think you answered this question, but since this person is on the auction block, I just wanted to give you the chairperson's question. So,
Sure.
Okay, and I think you already answered it, but just to clarify, chair of board, Jewel, use a designated village email account. I will have to check the account every day. What purpose does that read, sir? I think you answered the question, but she asked me to.
The answer is because it's the law, and I'm not trying to be difficult. If you're going to be chair on a board, and do you have to check an email? Yeah, I've got to check. I got 5 emails. So I check multiple email accounts. I put them on my pop account on my phone, and I check them every day, and they come up on my phone. So there are ways technology-wise so that's not so annoying. But I do think the prudent thing at this point is to make sure we're not violating the law, and that there's not an exposure to both the residents who are volunteers on board and we're doing this mostly out of the goodness of their heart to protect them, but also to protect the village. And I don't think if we give them and designate them to have emails, that solves the issue. If you say, oh, could you please courtesy copy? Well, then you get some people who do, some people who don't, some people are technology oriented, some people are not. I always think that they have to have those emails, but however, there has to be counsel about that. Those village emails are not to be used in anything other than related to that board's business. If not, you'll have a whole other Pandora's box you're opening up there, where they send out to, I don't know, they use their position in the board to do X, Y, Z. So there has to be some sort of contractual agreement, whether it's signed, written, or whatever, so that everybody knows that that's what it's used for.
See, I have no problem with issuing. It would be easy for the village boards to take up staff time to set up an account for each board member. Because I agree 100%. I, as a commissioner, have to have, go back to the village, then the board members should do that too. It would be difficult for the
I think it
commission.
would be hardly difficult now. It's really,
And that would protect them at the same time.
It'll save them time too, because if they do get a public records request, they won't have to bother the board member, hey, go through your email and send, the clerk can do that, or pay the IT people.
And it doesn't stop someone from violating the law. At the end of the day, if somebody chooses to use a personal email to cross-communicate, to be over people's houses and to do all those types of things, it's not going to stop somebody from breaking the law. What it'll do is make us as a village run more like what we're supposed to run. And put everybody in notice that that's the law, and you have to follow.
What shows is also it sets a stage that the village has policy in place to stay in good business, of course, sunshine law. Everybody, this is your official email address, this is for official business, communicate with other board members, commissioner, for the commissioners, not to email each other on items that come before us. So I think it's important. It's a way just to also protect the individual board members, protect the village as well. To be able to say, listen, this is a rogue individual, just like with a commissioner. The commissioner gets caught that they're violating sunshine law using their personal email accounts or burner phone.
On that individual.
It's that, the village can at least say, listen, we want everything we can possibly do. Yeah, and that's the key thing now. Next question would be about how do we capture taxes? Are they aware that they have to, that their phone, their personal phone, they have to turn it over?
Can we have a policy that covers that?
I'm sorry, go ahead, Crystal.
I just think that a lot of this comes out in the training. Have the ethics committee will come here, and it's gonna come out then, and it's the repetition of understanding. And if someone tells me that if I insist on using my personal email or text, then okay, understand that your phone could be confiscated, your laptop can have a forensics done on it, that your privacy is no longer going to be private because you commingle. I don't think we need to overly legislate, but I agree, and the boards are getting lessons in ethics training, but if that is something that's always repetition in the ethics training, then we're all adults. The onus is on you. If the emails are set up for them, and we have it here that, okay, company email, the official village email, village business, and it's there. No one said the village didn't provide it. If that individual board member circumvented that, they've been provided notice, they know what the rules are, they've been ethically trained, they understand what the repercussions are. You can't legislate for everything.
No, on that note, we've been talking a lot about intentional circumvention, but people move, people die. You know, what happens if you get a records request for all communications from a year ago with that person moved to Alaska and is not going to respond to the village clerk's request to go through their personal emails about some code hearing from a year ago? Or what if that person was hit by a bus the day before? And, you know, how would the village comply with the records request in that instance? You wouldn't be able to. So this also protects against not just intentional circumvention, but like life happens. And you don't want to be in a situation where you have to circle back to an individual to comply with the records request. I mean, with text and stuff, yes, sometimes that happens, but in general, emails, we can clean that up. So that's a very quick record keeping process and automated.
Is it that big of a deal to have a policy that basically says don't text village business to prevent this, or recommendation or something? And we're not going to over legislate, but at least recommend it, something. So
That's part of the whole training, is recommending, making those recommendations so that people are aware. And that's why we do the training annually, is to remind people, as well as to inform people.
there's also another side, which is the social media side. And that's something we haven't touched on, but it is something that is a tool that's used, like for the art board, they sent out, and it's not a big deal, they have a poster, they send it out. And you put it out in e-blast, so it's not like we haven't captured the poster, so it's not a problem, but at the same time, I do think we have to be cognizant of social media policies as well to make sure we're not capturing. So for example, if I go on a social media site and I interchange with the resident of the business, about depending on how many I have, usually it's once a month, sometimes once every 3 months, depends on how much I'm on social media, not a lot. But I'll always make sure that I then capture every one of those text messages, right, where it's a private message, and I'll let them know, and I then put it back into the service so it's a public record. I have a feeling, based on what I've seen in the past, many people do not do this, that have sat on this commission, that have social media blogs and so forth, and never copied it into the record. And I think that's another issue we need to address, because it is the law.
Their attorney general opinion on that, their attorney general opinions on that, I can include in the materials. That's I can include that in the materials for the next workshop or later.
Communication workshop. Roll into communication workshop.
Because if the social media post is being made in a capacity that could appear to someone that it's on behalf of the village as an entity, that needs to be captured and saved. So I can circulate that to those persons.
And I do think that should be part of our policies or our ordinances. I do think we need to, unfortunately, because it's the law, find a way to do that. At least so it's codified, so we know what the rules are, and not just fall back on statute. I think it has to be right there in front, because most people don't run the Florida statute and say, ooh, I didn't know that was going to be second degree misdemeanor. I didn't know I could be charged, money, or I could go to the state attorney's office or whatever. I'd like to make it easier, especially for the boards, so they know what the rules are, because they come, they go. We have board members come, some will stay for 2 months, and some will stay for 20 years. But I do think that's there. And I also think that despite some of the training, people are making conscious decisions to violate the law. And whether we want to openly discuss that or not, it is what's going on. And then I do think we have to be more, as a commission, we're responsible for ensuring.
If we have evidence of that, then is that not conduct unbecoming? Doesn't that take us back to where this conversation began around the removal from the board?
The board I'm most concerned about is the code board. I'm going to open it up and the code board members here who I respect. We're having issues. I think we're having issues that are, and I don't think this is necessarily the time for that discussion, but I do think we are having issues, and I am concerned because of that.
There are activities going on, sorry, I have my back to it, I know. if there are activities going on that could expose the village to liability, then it's our remit to do something about it.
Well, on that note, one, I think we need to be measured in what we say generally. That being said, as I previously stated, the code board does have more authority than the boards. They do. And the Florida statute speaks code enforcement boards as such. So one thing that I'd like clarification on generally is why an attorney doesn't preside over the proceedings with that board, and just so the village knows, that can be my firm, because the statute expressly says that the code enforcement board is supposed to have an attorney separate from the municipality's attorney. And I don't know if you all knew that. I don't know how long it's gone on that way, but
It's you've been here for 12 years. Have you ever had an attorney sit in your meetings?
We had attorney come occasionally, but we had never had a separate attorney outside from the village attorney.
okay, the statute expressly states that the attorney for the municipality cannot be the code board's attorney. So that, I mean, maybe that's something for budget hearings.
It wasn't the code board attorney, it was attorney that
So
sat
if you start the
in.
mic, just if you don't mind, so I can capture it. Thank you so much. Sorry. You're still.
That's the third
Yes,
hour.
yeah, you're still.
I can only recall maybe one, maybe two cases where the village attorney attended the meeting, but he really was not involved in that procedure of any kind. He was there to advise if necessary. He didn't take a stance on what was being discussed or voted on.
Was that to, and not to Monday morning for the record, was, if you recall, was that to advise the code enforcement officer as village staff, or was that to provide legal advice to the board?
It was to clarify some legal issues for all of us on the board, where the code officer may have had one interpretation, the board had a different one, and it required some clarification, but it really did not involve voting on a specific case or not.
Okay, so the statute requires that the code board, if you're going to appoint an attorney to preside over code board proceedings, which I recommend, based on some recent things that have happened, it has, just so everyone knows, that it can't be our firm, it would have to be a separate appointment.
Can I ask? I'm sorry, go ahead.
I would suggest, because, I'm looking at the time at 10:28, and because our village attorney made it quite clear that the code board should be viewed differently. I think that either this should be a separate issue for us to be able to flesh out and discuss what needs to be done with the code board. If we keep trying to intermingle it into this conversation, we're not going to get anywhere either way. Because the structure, I think, is going to be completely different, and I think it should be an opportunity in which the full board is present.
Yeah, I'm on board with Commissioner Johnson's thought, just so that we can get back to the focus of Commissioner Tudor's. Or I'm sorry, I forgot to move on. I forgot we moved on to yours. But regardless, to get back to that, because this obviously is a media discussion, so.
I agree.
Let's go back to where we were and finish.
Okay, so do we have a,
I just left the word out the end of my sentence, it fell out of my mouth, sorry.
is there any, appetite, well, we all agree that you want to, the preference at this point, and I'll let the staff work it out, is to have emails for more information. We're not going to just go here, it's going to be a session.
Yes.
Yeah.
Also, yeah, a separate section of it.
Yeah.
So, like, it's a whole other section.
And I don't know if you need to bring in P&Z as well, because there's budget issues.
That's fine, to suggest,
Yeah, I would suggest,
There should be
the
a
budget
separate-
issues.
There should be a separate section, like when we're looking at, if this could be in the ordinances or whatever. Like advisory boards versus quasi-judicial boards. They have to be handled differently.
Do we want to, is there anything else that we're going to leave this open to the question? Is there anything else you all want to discuss that's here? I know we discussed. Those are, I think those are the main points that people were upset about. The only other one is social media, which I mentioned earlier, which isn't. And
And I think the social media, if we're not having any communications, if someone mentioned having a discussion about communications.
Yeah, but I'm just talking about this, I'm talking about the sunshine portion of that big
Well,
caption, that's all.
to me, I feel like you already have language that says that you must communicate from your village email. Again,
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry, that was
if I
taken,
have to
yes.
state the affirmative, you can't communicate.
No, you're right, it's already here, it's already here.
Right, there's already a whole. Right.
I don't have anything else, anybody else have anything to add? Do we all agree on the 1 hour training?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. I think we're done for this evening. Is there any direction that the village attorney, I think this is the same kind of thing, we're, cleaning it up. Do we agree that since she's already written an ordinance, do you want her to go ahead and just clean up the ordinance? No, I'm asking for direction for the attorney. Is it okay for the attorney to go forth and just clean up the language based upon the conversation we had tonight, because I think we can discuss it out.
I think it'd be better to clean up the language that's, the current draft, bring it back to the commission, then as we look at it,
As a discussion item, not as a first or second reading.
Yeah.
Okay, no problem.
So I know my deadlines, are you planning on this for discussion not for read, but for discussion at the regular August commission meeting?
Can you do it that time?
Yes, I just want to be.
Everybody okay with that? There's a couple of points that were brought up, and I just want to make sure, hearing West Spring in the corner, two of the commissioners have conflicts on dates, so I'd like them to bring that up, so we can discuss that in the sunshine, so that everybody knows. You brought up one?
Yes, I will be out of the state for work. It is not something that I can withdraw from. It affects multiple individuals who are flying from different cities all over the country. And so I cannot be here on August 6th.
And that's the day we're doing the.
That's our commission.
Yes, it's a regular commission meeting.
Yes.
And I believe Commissioner Johnson Sardella is going to be out on
The
July
July 30th,
30th.
because I will be in California City for the California Law.
30.
That was a piece of that one.
You just need another bar.
We have four.
We have bar members. Is there any desire to reschedule? Just a moment, let me speak first. Thank you. I have no problem rearranging to accommodate the other commissioners if that's needed. I think the regular commission meeting, was the bigger of the two or not. I'll leave that up to my fellow commissioners.
Now that we moved the first budget hearing, is there any wiggle room in moving the workshop so that all of us are present?
Before you say no, can we at least find out if the schedule gets possible? And we can have a consensus.
Yeah, I think we can probably do that. I need to look at it. I can't tell you right this second, but let me look at it and email you guys tomorrow.
That's for the September, I'm sorry,
That's for the
for
July
For the July
30th.
30th meeting.
Okay,
Commissioner Johnson Sardella, when will you return?
I will be back the Monday, I think it's August 5th, if I'm not mistaken. I'll be back right before our meeting.
So what you're saying is you want to move the meeting from the 30th with one commission.
Is that a workshop?
If
It's a
that's what-
workshop,
That's
it's
the
not a
will of the
meeting.
commission. Yeah.
it's a workshop, it's not a meeting.
Yeah, but there's a timetable on this second workshop that has to be for
No, but since we postponed the hearings that come after this.
To September 10th.
space there.
So I would like to allow the accommodation for the commissioner as requested. Is there anybody else who objects to an accommodation for a workshop reschedule? No objects? I can't take a vote. I can't take a vote, but I just want to get consensus. Commissioner Tudor, do you have any objections?
I'm just looking to see.
I didn't pick a date, I'm just saying so that they can work on rescheduling if there's a consensus, since we don't have a process to actually do this, except for workshops.
Okay, we should probably go ahead and move to a date certain then. And so, August 6th is the.
It has to be the 5th.
That's the commission meeting.
I am not in the state that will travel.
You're not in the state, so we can't move it to one, hopefully, still be, but what about the 12th? Yes, does that work for the staff? Or the 13th, or the 13th.
Okay, on the 12th, we've got a code compliance board meeting and a Biscayne Park Foundation meeting simultaneously that
How
night.
about the 13th? 13th?
I think 13th will work.
So that means we just have to do that.
And we can do that here tomorrow.
And you also, at 3:20, on the finance executive